Good evening, members, staff, members of the gallery. I'd like to declare our meeting of the 17th of November open. And before we kick off, just wanted to let you know that this public meeting will be recorded and published to Council's website approximately 48 hours after the conclusion of the meeting and will remain on the website for 3 months. Audio and vision of any persons making a deputation and vision of the persons present in the gallery will be captured in that recording. So if you're not comfortable with that at all, now would be the time to leave the chamber. All right, we'll kick off. I'll ask Councillor Brown to please read the pledge.
We recognise the city's considerable natural and cultural heritage, including thousands of years of traditional ownership by Ghana and the more recent contribution from people either born here or who have migrated here. As we meet together, we build on this heritage by respecting and listening to each other, speaking clearly, being receptive to new ideas, speaking honestly, and deciding wisely, well-being of those we serve.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. The first item of business is confirmation of the minutes of our previous meeting. Members, what is your wish? Would someone like to move? Councillor Greaves, seconded Deputy Mayor Jeff Eaton. All those in favour? That's carried. There is no adjourned business or leave of absence, so the next matter is my Mayor's report. Members, what is your wish? Councillor Thamiliotis.
I'd like to move the Mayor's report and just add one addition for the Council to consider, that in light of Minister Chapman's response on corflutes, that we also write to the opposition and independents as well, who will be debating this matter in the coming weeks, just showing our support. So it's essentially the same letter, but opening it up to our opposition and independents to see the Council's response as well.
Councillor Thamiliotis, is that wording cover? Yeah. Just write a similar letter. Just put a similar letter. We know what that means. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor O'Brien, do you wish to speak as seconder? Councillor Thamiliotis, did you? No, we'll go to, oh, sorry, Councillor Brown.
Yes, just additionally to the GM crops decision, when we're lobbying the minister, I'm speaking on behalf of, I've had a number of wards that have had a lot of rural in the area over the years that I have served the community. We have a lot of vegetable, fruit and meat production that are also against having the loss of a genetically modified, a GM free. They optimise in what they sell because of the way they produce. Not all of them are certified as GM free, but they practice that, and they market it because of it. So it's not just the wine industry, it's just sadly that we don't have the statistics of those that are out there out on the plain at Wollonga and in Onkaparinga Hills and around, and probably other areas that have, I think some of them did write in as primary producers, but it's this day and age we're lean and green, and people prefer to have clean fruit and veg and not without the contamination. So broadly speaking, they need to be represented too.
Through you, Mayor Thompson, just to support Councillor Brown's comments. Throughout the process, we have raised the other producers, and you'll note actually in the Mayor's report that it says that we do stand behind our local producers and growers. And only last week there was a meeting where, yes, the wine industry were there, but there were also other food producers and growers present as well. And they're considering their options as well as the process that council's continuing to go through.
Subsequent to that, do they need to form a group to be able to be represented, or will we as a council represent them in our lobbying to keep GM free?
Through you, Mayor Thompson, they are forming a group. That was one of the reasons for the meeting last week. The different subsectors of the food and wine producers in the region. We'll continue to work with them and support them. It is fair to say that we've almost exhausted the parliamentary process, and you'd be aware that it was the Act that brought this to Council's attention and requirement. That probably is nearly played out, dependent, of course, on what the Minister provides us in response to our requests. But those other groups are currently determining what other action they might take outside of the parliamentary process.
And do they have to be certified to represent for the Parliament?
Through you, Mayor Thompson, if you mean certified organic, no, I don't believe so. There were people there who just have a strong interest in the sort of food and production that they participate in.
Okay, can I be notified of that group so I can share that with some of the producers?
Through you, Mayor Thompson, it's not something we're running. It's their group. It's not our group, but I'm happy to give you their details if you want to contact them.
Because I spoke to the Willunga Farmers Market at the On Business Awards, and they used to be quite savvy with the certified and non-certified producers of fruit and veg within that region, and they don't seem to have that contact anymore. It's a different group.
Through you, Mayor Thompson, they were present at that meeting.
Right.
So Pip Forrester, representing the Willunga market, was there.
Thank you.
Councillor Tom.
Got one. Thank you, Mayor. Just a question on the corporate signs. What is allowed by regulation? When we're saying only allowed as by regulation, do we need to quote a number, or I don't know what the regulation is?
There's no current limit for our city.
Right.
I think other councils may have implemented some limits, but we haven't.
Then that as only as allowed by regulation, it's asking for something that doesn't exist in the letter.
Just one moment, we'll bring
Okay.
some staff response. Yeah, I agree that Vicky Chapman's response is not that clear in regards to what you can and can't do. We think we can interpret it as there's regulations around size and placement, but not the number. But we will certainly seek clarity on that and take that question on notice.
Thank you.
Councillor de Graaf.
Thank you. I believe that the Minister Chapman's letter is only referring to corflutes with regards to local government elections. I was wondering if the mover or anybody else has information about their stance on federal and state elections.
Yeah, this is only to do with the local government bill. There has been some discussion with regards to what the state changes may be, but I can't confirm the details of that. We can also take that on notice.
Yeah, happy for that to be taken on notice. I was just, I am aware that this one is particularly only about local government, but I was just wondering whether they're applying these same standards to themselves. I believe the mover might have some information on this. I was wondering if she could possibly reply. If you know, I'm not sure if you do, but. Okay. Okay, so then we'd be exactly the same as state and federal. So they're banning theirs as well. Considering that. Thank you.
Councillor McMahon. There's no further debate. Councillor Smiliotis, do you wish to close? We'll go to vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Next item on the agenda is presentations, and we have some presentations to recognise service for 3 of our council members. So unfortunately, 2 of the 3 can't be here tonight for us to present them in person. And even though we have 1 here, I'm not going to hand it over due to the COVID restrictions. So I'll just acknowledge from here. So first of all, I'd like to congratulate Councillor Peet on 15 years of local government service since between 1997 and 2010, and more recently since 2018 until now. So currently, Councillor Peet sits on some additional committees, including the CEO Performance Management Committee and the Strategic Directions Committee, and previously the Services and Facilities, Planning and Heritage, Community Grants Assessment Panel, Tour Down Under Working Party, City Manager Review Panel, Community Grants Assessment Panel, Surf Lifesaving Facilities Steering Committee, Asset Management Group, Outdoor Recreation Needs for Young People Working Party, and also served as Deputy Mayor in 2007. So congratulations, Councillor Peet, on that amazing commitment to your community. I know that you're also involved in various community groups and the community really value your representation. So I'd like to present you with this certificate. Also this pin. I'm not sure where the camera is, so I'm just holding it up.
Thank you, Your Worship.
And this special one for the pool room as well.
Lovely, thank you.
I'd now like to congratulate Councillor Martin Bray for 10 years in local government service, elected in 2010. He also sits on the CEO Performance Management Committee and Strategic Directions Committee, and previously the Audit, Efficiency and Values Committee, and again also has represented various community groups. So again, congratulations, Councillor Martin Bray, for your 10 years of service. Well done. You also received this pin and lovely framed certificate. And finally, like to congratulate Councillor Wayne Olsen for also 10 years of service, also elected in 2010. He also sits on the CEO Performance Management Committee, Strategic Directions Committee, and the Information Technology Communication Reform Project Steering Committee, and also has represented various community groups over his years. I know that the local communities have really enjoyed your representation, Councillor Wayne Olsen. So congratulations. I also have a certificate and a special pin for you. So congratulations. Well done to all those councillors. We really appreciate having such wisdom as part of our council to provide to all the rest of us newbies who are still learning the ropes. We'll now move on to our deputations. We have 3 deputations this evening with regards to the Whitten Bluff project. Each of the 3 deputations are shared between multiple deputies. Each deputation will have 8 minutes. And at the end of the 8 minutes, there'll be question time. You'll hear a little chime when you have 2 minutes remaining. So if you can try to keep it to that time, that'd be really appreciated. And then over to questions. We also have a lot to get through tonight. So if members and deputies can try to keep questions and responses fairly succinct if possible. The first deputation we'll be hearing from is Alima Pilot, speaking also on behalf of Auntie Georgina Williams. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Footage of her and the bluff and her voice. This is her nephew, has just recently passed. Speaking.
No, sorry to hear that.
Over here because he's a little one. How he's come today to just talk about him coming home to country with his Auntie Georgina a long time ago when he was a little person like what Bella is now. She's 7, he was 6 at the time. Around Red Ochre Cove. Okay, come on, Alan. Just. Yay. He's going to get around to working sometime. I want you to invigorate his spirit for us. Yes.
Yeah, Marty's brought me here today to talk about the importance of our culture and what it means to us and how much he's shown us since we was young fellas and trying to pass it on to the next generation. And I remember first going down to the Oak Pits with her. I used to go to a Christian school and was taught how to march. So I went down to the beach and I was marching like I was in the Christian school and I bumped my toe on the rock and split my toe and I was crying and she said, "See, you're black fella, you're not Christian, you're going to a Christian school." No shoes on now, you got to walk properly like a black fella. So she taught me back then and she taught me how important the Bookie Trail is and pass it on to my kids. I've got 5 of my own at that age now. So it's in some ways it's sad to see the things that go on with our culture and the things that are happening today. It's also strengthens me to see my auntie and all my aunties and family fighting on for our spiritual understanding. Not only that, just knowing where we're from. And, if you don't know where you come from, then you don't really know who you are. So it's very important to hold on to those things and also pass it on to your children. And so yeah, I'm just grateful to be here today to talk for my family and all this land that we're a part of. And yeah, just thank you very much for being here. It's very good.
People want to heal themselves by start walking their dogs. I mean, I've got a dog here with me today too to give her a walk as well because I'm coming here. But that's what they do. They come in here. Hey, Robert. They come here and walk here to walk the dog. That's all the only purpose they have. For all of this to accommodate that. was that they were doing the book, Kenny Hampton, and when they write him up, as he's the one that actually did the Jabrookie. He had nothing to do with Jabrookie. Kenny Hampton was a St. Francis House boy and a really lovely person. I like Kenny Hampton. I really liked him a lot. He used to stick up for me when I was a kid, a teenager, out and amongst the, out in the people. He was a great person, Kenny. I loved him dearly. Like most of the boys there. Moriarty, I knew him when he was 14 years old in the home of St. Francis House. Charlie's Angels, all of them. They all got big jobs in government on that 2% employment. Yeah. So anyway, that's the kind of thing that happened. And then what's the outcome of all of that is that they put into jobs like our Pastor Doug Nichols. He became the governor because the white people wanted to do something good for us, but pushing us into situations in equal rights, you know, equal rights to be white on all the white institutions, but not having a peaceful settlement with us as the black people, as the Aboriginal people, the original people. Nothing to do with that. It's just, okay, you're a residual leftover, and so we'll take you in. Yeah. We'll still go ahead and do things like this. When I'm written up, I'm written up as if I'm talking for the old man. I'm talking for my own family, for my grandfather and my father, to my people, my children, that they have rights from. That old man actually was the last to keep that story
for them,
for all of them,
yeah.
For all of those who belong to it, the clans, right? But I'm the only one, my family and me, the only one that has done anything about it, or attempted to do anything about it, and not to be aggressive or any of those sort of things, but to show that a peaceful settlement can be effected on the country, and that these geological monuments, like what's here, can be looked at as what they are to the ancient wisdom of the land and the spirit of our people and the land and the union between us and that, which is being torn away from us again right now by doing this. What's here? Anyway, I don't want to talk anymore about it.
The old man Auntie Georgina was referring to was Clarence Long. And his version of the Jabrookie Dreaming tracks was published by anthropologist Norman Tyndale. And this is from the south side here. This is an Aboriginal site area under imminent threat of further damage and desecration. Yeah, and this is the view from the Port Noarlunga jetty when Roxville has been done. Yeah, so I want to just read this quickly. I appeal to you, Mayor Thompson, to please show leadership in advocating for First Nations people as a demonstration of your acknowledgement and appreciation in awarding Nunki Burka Mikwa, Auntie Georgina Williams at the NAIDOC Week Mayor's reception on the 9th of December, on the 9th of November 2020. As you have stated in your Mayor's report, NAIDOC 2020 invites all Australians to embrace the true history of this country, a history which dates back thousands of generations. I'm asking you to model the spirit of NAIDOC as well as the aspirations espoused by the Council in the pledge at the beginning of the agenda, and defer voting on the Whitten Bluff Base Trail until a later date pending action sought in Auntie's deputation. Given the recent status of SA as a COVID hotspot and advice to vulnerable individuals, and given that Auntie is currently still recovering from a round of chemotherapy, which makes it difficult for her to concentrate and respond for a few days after each treatment, I'm asking this to allow her the space and support to bring together material that has not been referenced so that all may review and honestly discuss the documents that Council has put up on the community engagement page, one of which may be in breach of Section 10 of the Aboriginal Heritage Act. And so that Auntie is able to make detailed on false misleading statements that have been made in response to previous deputations and in Council answers to Council drafts listed agenda item 9.12 Whitten Bluff Base Trail engagement outcomes. Auntie's requested actions could form the basis of the sort of conversations you have said you will welcome as newly appointed committee member of GARA and LGA Board Director. When discussing statewide matters that affect local government, these discussions will also be relevant to your position as fellow in the 2021 class of the Asia Pacific Mayor Academy of Sustainable Urban Development. Thank you. And some of the recommended motions. As the recent media coverage of damage to Juukan Gorge in Western Australia has shown, traditional owner custodians, such as myself, have recourse to seek an emergency, and Auntie Georgina, has recourse to seek an emergency declaration for the preservation and protection of significant Aboriginal areas threatened with imminent injury or desecration under the provisions of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Heritage Protection Act 1984.
Thank you. That's your time. We'll open up to questions now.
I would prefer to work with councils to avoid taking to the step.
Councillor De Graaf. Oh,
They haven't cleared it.
sorry, go ahead, Councillor Brown. Did you have a question?
That hadn't been cleared from when I
Oh,
gave
okay.
the pledge.
Sorry. Councillor De Graaf.
Thank you, ladies, for presenting on behalf of Auntie Georgina tonight. I was reading through some of the information that we've been provided just in the last couple of days, and there was a reference in there to Auntie Georgina having made a registration for a site of significance for the Whitten Bluff. Do you have any information about that? Because it appears that she started that registration process there through the state government to register that site.
Yeah, I can't speak on behalf of Auntie Georgina.
All right, thank you.
Members, are there any further questions? There's no further questions. Thank you so much for your deputation this evening. Oh, sorry, Councillor Brown, did you have a question? Sorry about that.
Just wondered if Chris Martin, who was working at Neperendi at Old Ranella, whether he's liaising with Georgina and you with what can and can't be done and how to?
Well, I'm sure Auntie Georgina spoke about this before with council.
Okay, I just wanted things on track, and I just felt that perhaps working, Chris Martin, I think it was, that was doing a couple of days a week at Neperendi, whether there can be some liaison. He's not there. Okay, I'll check this out after the meeting. Yeah.
Councillor De Graaf.
Thank you. Sorry, I did just have one more quick question. So just to be really clear, Auntie Georgina is requesting that the council defers voting on this item so that she can, have a little bit of time put aside for her illness and then commence stakeholder discussions. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your deputation. Next, we'll be hearing from Nigel Black and Stephen Reynolds.
Jake.
Mr. Black and Mr. Reynolds, you'll have 8 minutes and you'll hear that chime when you have 2 minutes remaining.
Would it be possible to show the slides that I sent over, which is a PDF of coastal images? Sorry, there's two sets of slides are being shared. So is it possible to show those coastal images?
Did you provide those for the deputation tonight, or are you referring to the ones that were circulated via email?
I only sent one set of images, and at the moment they're not on the screen. I sent them to Sue, and then she sent them to you guys. Yeah, okay. You'll have all seen the images, hopefully. So is this the only file that you have to put up for our deputation? Is that true at the moment? Yeah. I also sent one because, not sure what to do right now. But this is a beautiful photo. It's just not the photo I wish to present tonight. And if I was going to refer to my PDF, I would be in a lot of trouble right now. That the file's not up there. but I don't have to refer to that. That's fine. That's okay. These things happen. Yeah, so there's nothing there sitting in your folders. It's okay. I know that you guys have got a lot to get through, so
Are you referring to the one that was circulated? I think it was Charles. Someone's
sent on Monday. Yeah.
Yeah, it has the cliff shots in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that should be on email.
Yeah. And if it becomes too cumbersome to find it, that's okay, because I understand everyone's under time pressures tonight, for sure.
If you can just give us one moment, we'll see if we can find it.
Sure. Well, whilst we're waiting, I would like to say how wonderful I think that your pledge is that you guys go by. I really do. I read that as well, over the last couple of weeks, and I thought that was just fantastic. Oh, this thing works here. Yeah, cool. That's great. All right. Thank you so much. That's great. Thanks for finding that, and congratulations to the elected members that are celebrating their 10 years. That's fantastic. So I guess I'm going. Didn't know I was going. We call upon your love of the natural places of the Onkaparinga region and ask you to preserve this last sacred place in Port Noarlunga. We are also here to share some shortcomings we see with the community engagement process. The process did not disclose known environmental and cultural concerns. It did not disclose what stopped the project from proceeding for the last 16 years. It did not disclose concerns about the cliff fragility and decades of research with suggestions to not build in this area. It did not disclose the unique marine life that thrives there. It did not disclose the marine protection zones that the project crosses into. However, the council does acknowledge that the project is politically contentious, but without detailing exactly what that is. In the deputation setting, our concerns and ideas have been or felt somewhat attacked or dismissed, which is strange when actually you have asked the community to share concerns. As stakeholders, we have never been approached by the council to formally engage in discussion. The project was approved in May 2020, but we'd already met with Katrine Hildyard a year before. By November 2019, we presented at the invitation of Katrine, where she and Bill Jamieson clarified there was insufficient funding at that point, and they asked, should we continue campaigning for funding? So this was not that long ago, a year ago. Only 20 of 40 people showed support to continue forward. So that's half the people that were there at that meeting. Katrine and Bill promised a $400,000 environmental risk assessment would take place and that they would share decades-old assessments that they were using, but we haven't seen either of those things. A 2017 petition headed by the chair of the Port Noarlunga Tourism and Business Group asked for support for funding, but it did not share known concerns. We question the full validity of this petition. Facebook is proven unreliable for general data collection, such as your citing of a Facebook group. We question the validity of this group as an entirely legitimate data source. Regarding the Have Your Say results, 35% of the 81 respondents do not support the project. And we see that it's misleading to reduce complex data to a percentage and then redress it as a vote. So we seek investigation into these concerns further. For those supportive of the project, the council's documentation is absent of concerns. So we would like to ask them, would you support this project if it was at risk of rockfall and wave force in a time of increasing ocean and storm levels? If it were impossible to avoid environmental damage in the time of climate crisis? If it ignored Aboriginal cultural concerns in the time of the equality movement? And if viable options to ameliorate these concerns were being ignored? We think that the 170,000 community members of Onkaparinga would be horrified if they found this project proceeded regardless of these concerns. So with variation built into the funding, we ask, why not employ that variation to essential infrastructure and achieve finalising the coastal park whilst ameliorating environmental and cultural concerns. Our request today is to proceed with forming updated unbiased impact assessments and to cultivate further community and stakeholder consultation so that the project can be understood in light of those concerns. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you. I'm here with Paul. We're members of the Marine Life Society, and during this deputation we will show some of recent photos from taken from Christie's Reef near Witten Bluff. The Marine Life Society's philosophy is to work with and cooperate with people to achieve a satisfactory outcome. I wish to speak in general terms about the current debate regarding the proposed cliff-based trail at Witten Bluff. Witten Bluff is a special location and many aspects of the bluff need to be considered regarding any proposals. It seems to me that not all stakeholders were consulted regarding the final proposal. It also seems that not all aspects of the bluff have been considered. I am all in favour of inclusiveness, but I have reservations about the mix of push bikes, pedestrians and prams. I'm not sure that a trail must extend south of the bluff to cater for foot traffic. A decent service on the existing track north of the bluff would satisfy most people. Council has been debating a possible variation of the proposal when it probably could have discussed either scrapping the idea or completely revamping it. If Council had fully consulted all stakeholders and considered all the aspects, it would probably have considered different proposals. I have heard debate about erosion, climate change, winter storms, Indigenous heritage, marine life, bird life, wildlife and fossils. All of the environmental aspects of the bluff ought to be a consideration. It is up to Council to make the correct decisions for the location. Proposing changes to satisfy 100 petitioners is not a good move in itself. Council may not fully appreciate just what a special place the Rocky Reef in the waters of the bluff is. It is an extension of the main reef at the jetty. It is favoured by many marine creatures. If Council has ever envied Whyalla for its annual cuttlefish aggregation in winter, you may not realise that you have your own aggregation each summer, a much better option. I speak of the annual breeding aggregation of placid Port Jackson sharks. These sharks seem to have adopted the bluff as a better site than the main reef. They now aggregate in shallow water where novice snorkelers can easily see them. Shark experts from around the state and country have started coming here to witness the sharks and conduct research on them. Professor Charlie Huvenius from the Southern Shark Ecology Group is happy to provide information to Council. I volunteer for a group called Experiencing Marine Sanctuaries, which introduces the young, the elderly and the disabled to the wonders of snorkeling. They particularly like to focus on cuttlefish and Port Jackson sharks. They were overwhelmed with the interest in their guided shark tours at Christie's Reef by the Bluff this month. There is a possibility that this phenomenon could be affected by proposed changes. Council has a great opportunity to take advantage of the interest in the marine life at Witten Bluff, especially Port Jackson sharks. Thank you for this opportunity to tell you just what a special place Witten Bluff is. And if you need any inspiration, 50 years ago this week, the Advertiser reported attempts by conservationists to save Garden Island at Port Adelaide and declare it a national park. Thanks again for your consideration. Have you seen all the photographs too, perhaps? Yes? So this is just a recent snorkel where we take disabled people, elderly and that sort of thing, snorkeling perhaps for the first time to witness the marine life in the shallow waters at Christie's Reef. And this has been an annual event in recent years. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your deputation. We'll take questions now. Councillor de Graaf.
Thank you. Thanks for your deputations. My question's for Nigel. I was just wondering if you could explain a little bit more about that last photo that was actually just up on the screen then, coincidentally, just off the wave cut shelf. I was wondering if staff might be able to bring that one back up. I was just wondering if you could explain about that and a little bit more in relation to the jetty as well, and you know the rough seas and tides, etc.
Sure. Well, actually, the person, we did bring Charles along here because he took those photos and put together that article. So would you like to, I mean, don't want to crisscross too much. Yeah, so those images were sent out to the elected members, so you probably have had a little bit of a look at them. Sunday, okay.
Maybe
So-
just wait till it comes up first, because I'm not sure if
sure.
they know the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, everyone's sort of gone,
Yep.
they've seen them.
Thanks.
It's
Yeah, so I don't want to, burn time too much for everyone. Hopefully that can be brought up in a minute. But yeah, those conditions are not, serious storm conditions. They're what we would call tidal swell conditions. Someone like Bill would know about that sort of stuff. He's been in the water his whole life. So we're, have a little bit of a look through there. This is a sort of, remember, this is not extreme sort of, not extreme conditions. It's not sort of clicking through. Oh, there you go. So they're swell conditions, and you can see that the rock shelves that are going to be potentially built upon, they are, I'm just not clicking through there.
Councillor de Graaf, what is your actual question? We need a specific
I was
question
just
so that
wondering,
Nigel
yes,
can
if
answer.
Nigel could explain about whether it was rough down at the jetty that day.
Yeah. So yeah, not necessarily rough. There's swell. So rough doesn't mean storms, right? So there's a difference between storm conditions and tidal swell conditions. You can see there that there's swell, but not necessarily high velocity winds. So that the structures are being overwhelmed with waves and so on and so forth. So, that's the sort of, I guess, the point you wanted to...
Well, the fish is where it is on the jetty. There were no waves breaking over the jetty.
Let me get one of that.
It was normal winter conditions.
There you go.
Fairly moderate for the time of year. There you are.
So the reef's not having all those sort of exploding waves and these sorts of things, but of course you can see there that where the structure is proposed is been quite dominated by the swells there. And that's not a big swell either. You can see in the background, Southport there, see snakes up the top. Bill knows all about these areas. There's not a lot of swell there at Southport there. Bill will be able to recognise that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor de Graaf, do you have another question?
Yes, I do. Yes, thank you, Nigel. And so just to be really clear that I understand your group and the other group who have already spoken are open to some discussions and finding some kind of a compromise that you think could potentially be a good outcome for the community. Could you just explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think that's probably the primary objective is to engage in discussion and share in our concerns and see if, what the council thinks of those sort of things. At the moment, we haven't had anything like that, but I guess we're heading towards that if that's possible. And that would really be a good thing to take place, is to have discussions and engagement. I mean, we spoke a bit with Rob and he was pretty cool, but there wasn't much he could discuss really. He sort of sent us into this space because that's where we'll get to talk to you guys. So returning to a space of like discussion that's not in a deputation mode would be really, really good.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brown?
I've got two questions. The first one is obviously where there is shark breeding. Can you give me a guesstimate of whereabouts that shark breeding is and what the species are?
Well, there's a lot of rocky reef between Witham Bluff and Chris's Reef, but you've also got the main reef itself. And so we've seen shark breeding aggregations along the main reef and around Witham Bluff over the last 2 or 3 years. They tend to come here right at this very moment, like early November. We did find last year that some were still here as early as late as March, which is quite wonderful, really, the fact that we're still hanging around right through summer, perhaps.
Right.
So these are the Port Jackson species.
Port Jackson.
So they're quite almost domesticated. I've seen kids pet them in Williamstown.
So they're coming through the reef, which was the original cliff face many, many years ago. They're coming through there and breeding there.
That's right. They're gathering at the reef and any little ledges or caves that they can find. They might sort of gather under the ledges and caves during the day and just come out at dawn or dusk, that kind of thing. But they have been known to, the odd one will wander out during the daytime when snorkelers are out there looking at them, and they can be seen quite close up on the ledges. They might only be a metre or less long, and they're quite approachable and, like I say, just puppy dogs of the sea, really.
And the other one is, we've got scales here of opposite ends of the spectrum, is do you have an option of what you suggest to mitigate the ongoing erosion of the cliffs? Because this is what the problem is.
Well,
Trying to...
Sorry. There's been a lot of changes in the last 40 odd years, I'd say. We used to love diving at Witten Bluff from what was then a beach. But now, of course, the track's all there, sort of thing. I think enough changes have occurred already. Really, you could really just tidy up what's already existing, and people should be happy with that. As far as providing services for disabled and that sort of thing, well, we're trying to do that actually in the water as well. So hopefully that will be a good thing for these people that are looking for things to do and to get out and about.
You're aware of that where the original foreshore was, and even Table Rock, which is further in, and the soils underneath the soft clays and that. So the issue is trying to mitigate the risk of further loss of the coastline. And the revetment wall was a suggestion to stop some of the erosion and the cliff subsiding. How would you feel that should be addressed? Have you got...
No, that's not my area of expertise, but you've already tried to stop the erosion. Has that been successful?
I'm not a structural engineer, but I know there is a huge problem there.
And are you just trying to prevent more erosion further south, or is it because you just want to put a base trail there where it might be subject to erosion?
I was just wondering whether you had other solutions of how to mitigate further erosion of the cliffs.
Yes, leave it as it is.
Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation. There's no further questions.
Sandra, I would just like to say that...
Thank you for your deputation. There's no...
For the question, I just wanted to respond to that question, if that's okay, Erin. On the south side, it's not as prominently steep as it is on the north side, and the way I think that the way that the situation is on the south side, it's much more, the gradient is less. But I think one of the you can't stop the ocean doing what it's doing, but maybe on the top you can stop. One of the things is the bumps in the road. Everyone sort of, the sort of compression. That would be one way. If you didn't have those bumps, you would be helping the things. The lumps you drive over. That sort of helps the top crumble in. So you've got the bottom coming in from the ocean and the wind, and then you've also got the top with the road sort of. Those bumps. That would be a simple way to sort of help them.
Okay, thank you for your deputation. You can return to the gallery. Our next deputation, also on the Witten Bluff Base Trail, is from Natalie Sanderson and Gail Kinsett. Please come forward. Again, you'll have 8 minutes and you'll hear a chime when there's 2 minutes remaining.
Thank you. Bondi to Bronte, New South Wales. Noosa Heads, Queensland. Cape Byron, Lighthouse, New South Wales. Chase National Park, Tasmania. The South Coast Track, Tasmania. What do all these places have in common? They have a coastal track which coexists with nature and celebrates the natural landscape and beauty of these locations. Good evening, Mayor, councillors, and fellow residents. My name is Natalie Sanderson, and I'm a resident of Christie's Beach and a member of the Witten Bluff Base Trail Association. My grandparents moved to Port Noarlunga in 1983, and the primary reason they moved to Port Noarlunga was because the beaches were better than Elizabeth. My passion for the project began when I moved back to Christie's Beach after living in Bondi, New South Wales for 6 years. Living in Bondi, I witnessed the power of a coastal path with my own eyes and couldn't believe in that time that I was living to state that this hadn't been completed. I'm here today to raise my concern that I suspect some people are wanting to slow the progress of this project with the ultimate goal in delaying it to a point where the funding will be lost completely. This would be a travesty. I understand and appreciate the concerns some community groups have raised in relation to the base trail, but as a current resident and member of this community, we just want this project completed after 30 years. I think it's imperative that progress be made towards the completion of this project to align to the wishes of thousands of residents who've completed surveys, petitions, and on social media. There is a wonderful opportunity to share this amazing landscape with the elderly, the disabled, mothers with prams, and small children. A top trail would not accommodate for these groups, and the objective of the base trail is making a path accessible to all. I believe this path has symbolic reason of bringing the communities of Port Noarlunga and Christie's Beach together. Some residents believe there is a social divide between these two suburbs, and having a path will bridge the social and economic divide. As a global marketing manager, I also see the power of Instagram and the local economy. Studies have shown there is a clear correlation between positive economic impact via tourism and pictures shared on social media platforms such as Instagram. According to the Whitten Bluff Economics Benefit Report completed in April 2020, the Whitten Bluff Base Trail is projected to increase visitor spend by 4.66 million and have a $3.8 million direct and indirect impact to the local economy. We cannot deny the numbers. Looking closer at social media and the community engagement over the last 10 years, we can really see an overwhelming response from the community. In May of this year, the Ongar-Pringa Council announced the funding was approved. 878 people engaged with the Whitten Bluff post positively, only 3 negatively. And in September of this year, 937 people engaged with another post, and 934 of those were positive and 3 were negative. These 2 posts have the highest engagement on the Ongar-Pringa Facebook page year to date. Clearly, it's topical. I don't want to preach the facts and figures of this project. You have all heard them before. But in summary, in 2019, 1,000 people supported a petition arranged by the Honourable Amanda Rishworth, and another petition in 2017 containing 1,089 signatures was presented to Council. How much more community engagement do you need? We need to stick to the key dates in the original timeline and continue to collaborate with community groups on the design. I know this project has nothing to do with American politics, but the media awash with coverage of it recently. I can't help but borrow the words of Joe Biden and plead us to unite on this issue, to come together, to listen, and to finish off this project for once and for all.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors and residents. My name is Gail Pouncett. I have been a ratepayer in this council for 32 years. The last 23 of them I've lived in Christie's Beach. The last time I stood before you was in 2017, and I did a deputation for the Whitten Bluff Base Trail. And I did that with Katrine Hilliard. I was then the chairwoman of the Christie's Beach Business and Tourism Association, and I had been on that association for 11 years. And myself and my executive worked very, very hard with councillors, with the CEO at the time to make this Whitten Bluff trail happen. I cannot believe that I'm standing here again tonight on the same subject, the completion of the Whitten Bluff Base Trail. I'm going to take you on a little memory lane at the moment. I'm going to take us back to late 2015. And Mr. Mark Dowd, the then CEO, asked his staff to find a shop on Beach Road to create a council-run pop-up shop for community consultation. I know because I was a commercial agent on the street. It was run by the very skilled and passionate Mr. Philip Tanner, and he installed a whiteboard and began to ask the community for their top 10 ideas of what they would like to see happen in Christie's Beach. Consultations after consultations after consultations have happened in Christie's Beach. And they were reluctant, but he had 6,500 community members walk through that door, and they put 250 ideas on that whiteboard, and there were 30,000 30,000 ticks, likes and loves for those ideas. After compiling the top 10, number 1 was the finish of the base trail, which of course is earmarked as part of the South Australian Foreshore Access Plan. Let's not forget this. So yes, our community has spoken. And I take us back to that base trail, that deputation I did that night with Katrine. It was unanimous. It was unanimous. Every member voted yes for this because they came to the realisation that they had to listen to the community, and the community had spoken. I just think that now is not the time to be putting anything on hold. Let's not have any hidden agendas. Let's not waste any more of our ratepayers' money or time on delaying this. Enough is enough. They've had plenty of time for consultation and to listen and to find out what needs to be found out, and it has all been found out. You know, there's a health risk now. People are climbing down on those rocks to try and get over to Port Noarlunga. Well, what about safety? Now I'm talking to you about COVID. There's health and well-being here. You know, we need to think about what this community needs. They have fought for this for 30 years. They have worked for this for 30 years, and it's been promised to them, and it is time. It is time to give the community what they want. Let's not deviate from the plan. You know, there's been so much work done on Witten Bluff. I know that council has all of the information. It's all been said. It's all been looked at and talked about over and over and over again. Now is the time to act for your community. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies, for your deputation. We'll take questions. Councillor de Graaf.
Thank you for your presentations, ladies. So I've got 2 quick questions. Back in 2015 and earlier on, when you were talking about this with your groups, would you say that most people were in support of a walking trail down there?
Most definitely.
So it's a walking trail as opposed to, when did the bike track kind of side of things start coming into those discussions?
Near the end of the time that the pop-up shop was running, there were many, many meetings where the community gathered together to have discussions, and all of those things happened in those discussions.
About a bike track or a walking path?
All of it, all of it. They all were ideas that the community felt was important.
And can I add something to that as well? I walk the trail almost every day.
So do I.
Yeah, and I actually interview people as I'm volunteering my time with this project. I want to make sure that I'm representing the majority voice, and everyone is with prams, on bikes.
Ms. Sanderson, I'll just get you to speak into the mic so everybody else can hear.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I walk the trail almost every day, and I survey the people as I walk past because I really want to care. I really want to care what people actually think about this and if they want it, and they really do. And there are mothers with prams who drive from Woodcroft who have to carry their pram onto the sand, lots of kids with little bikes and things like that. This is what the community's after.
All right, so thank you. My other question was about your business group as well. Is it the Christie's Beach Business Association?
Business and Tourism Association.
Yeah, has your group had any specific sit-downs with the Kaurna community to discuss some of these concerns that we heard right before your deputations? Have you had sit-downs together?
One in particular where we met at the Christie's Beach Surf Lifesaving Club. And actually, as we were leaving that day, someone from the Kaurna group said they really approved of this and would love it to go through. So that's something I vividly remember.
And so just having heard the concerns tonight, how do you reflect on that some kind of a compromise might be required?
One of the things, if you don't mind me answering this, one of the things that was very important to me personally, and I know my exec, was that we did something that the whole community wanted to have happen. And we know that there's at some point there we get a percentage of finance for artwork and things like that. We really were interested in making this track or trail, whatever you want to call it, something that really encompassed Aboriginal culture. And I see it as one of those, you could have signposts with Aboriginal culture and artwork and really make it something that they would be proud of too, we would hope.
Yeah, I can understand your point of view. I think that's kind of what the council has in mind. But don't you think it would start with actually like sitting down with the Kaurna people and
We've done
talking
that.
to them like all together?
We've done that. We've had these discussions for years.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Jamieson.
G'day. So,
hello, Dan.
Look, I apologise for Councillor de Graaf. She's been saying for ages, and the mayor's picked her up, that it's a bicycle track. It's a walking trail. So I put it back to you when we were sitting in those rooms. That's the younger time and in your time, Gail.
Yes.
Did we talk about the coastal park and that part being of the coastal park with the 3-metre drives and all of those things? So we actually discussed it that way. So perhaps you can do that, and it's not a bike track. And I apologise for the trying to trick you into saying that. So the question is, we had that discussion. What did you discuss?
Well, I believe it was because of the state government had regulations regarding this path. There is specific regulations that the path has to follow, and therefore we would comply with those regulations.
Yeah, so there would have to be handicap access and,
Yeah.
you know, like all of those things need to be included.
There doesn't appear to be any further questions. Thank you for your deputation. Members, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Strategic Directions Committee meeting minutes. Councillor Peat, were you wanting to move those minutes?
Yes, I will move them, Your Worship, with the addition of a resolution, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
The extra dot point or the resolution here is in reference to item 7.1, Aldinga Sports Park Master Plan and Wilfred Taylor Reserve Regional Equestrian Facility Plan. Can I give a bit of a preamble to this?
Yes, go ahead. And members, the words are on the screen for you to read also.
Members, while acknowledging the significant and positive progress of discussions about relocation of the Aldinga Equestrian to new facilities at Wilfred Taylor Reserve, there remains the possibility that the Aldinga and Morphett Vale Equestrian Clubs may not reach an agreement to cohabit at Wilfred Taylor Reserve. Hence, given the broader planning for the Aldinga Sports Park, the future location of the Aldinga Equestrian Club would be uncertain. For this reason, and in order to provide greater certainty and security for Aldinga Equestrian Clubs, I table an additional resolution here for your consideration to support and build on the 3rd of November Strategic Directions Resolution for item 7.1. This recommendation has been developed in collaboration with council staff and seeks to formalise the intended approach should the current Wilfred Taylor Equestrian Facility proposal not proceed. So the motion is as read, please. Should all parties be unable to agree on future governance arrangements as set out in the Memorandum of Understanding for relocation of the Aldinga Equestrian Facilities to Wilfred Taylor Reserve, council funding identified for development of new equestrian facilities will be redirected to the development of a suitable equestrian facility at an alternative location in consultation and agreement with the Aldinga Equestrian Club. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Simon McMahon, would you like to speak as seconder? Doesn't appear to be any further debate. Councillor Peat, would you like to close? Oh, sorry, Councillor Olsen.
Mayor, as I'm new to this Zooming thing, do I just raise my hand like I did in the past, or do I have to wave my hands on the screen?
If you can do both, I've been asked from governance, but yeah, raising your hand would be great, and they'll keep an eye out for your hand.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I have a question on this, and it might be just reminding me on the report, because I can't remember it exactly now, but I don't believe there was a funding figure in that SDC report for this. Could someone clarify that, please?
Yeah, there was.
Through the Mayor, the body of the report referred to an $875,000 allocation to support relocation of Aldinga Equestrian. So that would be the funding that would be referred to in this resolution.
And so I'm assuming that if it's greater than $800 and whatever $1,000, then this doesn't cover that. This resolution doesn't cover it. It's only up to that amount of funding. So if it's $1.5 million, this is not approving $1.5 million to go to some other facility.
Through the Mayor, that would be my understanding of the resolution.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
It's a bit of an anomaly in what has been said, and Councillor Peake was at a meeting that all the elected members were invited to that I attended. It's the Aldinga Equestrian Club, the Aldinga Riding Club, and the Morphett Vale Riding Club that there are negotiations going on about as to whether they can form some governance in relocating to where the Morphett Vale Riding Club is at the present time. The previous motion that we had was to work out if there can be a memorandum of understanding between these parties. At the present time, that meeting concluded that they would have another meeting in a fortnight. So this is undecided at the present time because the clubs are talking with the council officers and working things. Whether they work things out or not, I don't know. I had no involvement. I was an observer. I thought it's best that I be observer for the whole three clubs. But the point being is that no decisions have been made at this present time with regards to it. It's this is probably preempting what the next meeting or possibly the next meeting, because it's not going to be a simple thing. I did explain the other week, it's like putting three football clubs sharing the one oval and the one club room. It's not without governance and it's problematic, but it's not to say that it's impossible. So I'm just a little confused about this motion because Aldinga Riding Club are also at the facility of where the equestrian, they share it together. So I wouldn't like to leave them left out to dry either.
Councillor Bray.
Thank you. I don't push it, do I? Thank you, Mayor Thompson. I would like to speak against this amendment for the reason that the wording of the original strategic directions resolution seemed to me to have the intent to encourage consolidation of some very expensive infrastructure. And although it talked about the need to reach agreement, the availability of that money seemed to be implied. The availability of that money might for the equestrian was dependent on the equestrian clubs being able to reach an agreement and get together and have this consolidation. And that was my interpretation of it. And I supported it at the time because I think that's important. What we're doing here is moving away from what I regard the principle of district facilities where you can have some consolidation and efficiency, because equestrian facilities, they may have special requirements, and to duplicate them across the city would start to get expensive. So I could really see the logic in the staff's proposal for that. And I think this is watering it down in as much as it's saying, well, we're going to have another piece of infrastructure and we're going to have to put money into that. And then at Wilfred Taylor in the future, that may require some upgrade, but there won't be the money for that because we've put the money in somewhere else. So I don't think I can support this at this time. Thank you.
Councillor Greaves.
Thanks, Mayor Thompson. I've got a question to start with. The meeting minutes that you've
that have been provided to us, I believe that there was, sorry, let me just get to the page, 7.1, there was an motion moved and seconded, and then Councillor Peake moved an amendment, but I can't see the actual words of that amendment. I think all we've done is copied and pasted the original motion.
That's right.
I asked the question because I believe that this motion here actually formed part of that original amendment that was lost. Is that correct?
No.
No, so the amendment was lost.
Yeah,
But
but the actual words of the amendment aren't actually in the minutes.
Oh, okay.
I guess that's what I'm just trying to ascertain.
I'm
if that is
looking
the
at them
case.
right now. So what did you want to clarify about that
I just wanted
amendment that was
to know
lost?
if they were the words that were actually in the amendment.
No.
Or was it similar?
No.
All right, can I move an amendment then, please? I'd just like to move the motion as written in the agenda.
Do you wish to speak to that?
Thank you, Mayor Thompson. Yeah, I believe there was actually a lot of discussion and a debate around this at the actual SDC meeting. And part of, well, I mean, I didn't speak at the time, but part of my concern around the amendment that was originally put was that it was doing exactly what Councillor Bray is mentioning, and that is tying us down to developing another facility, when in actual fact what we should be doing, and what is currently the case, is we are encouraging our equestrian facilities to actually combine, for us to be able to actually consolidate not only the facilities but also the funding that we have available, and actually create something that is workable. And I think at the time the CEO mentioned an example of football clubs that had actually been able to do this. Strathalbyn, thank you. Strathalbyn Football Club actually being able to do it. So I think, you know, yes, there is a possibility that this could go south. You know, it may not work out. But what I don't want to do is sort of provide the carrot at the end to say, hey, you know, while we're going into negotiations around this in good faith, but don't worry, there's an out if you don't want to do it. I just think it's really important that we try and utilise the funding that we have to be able to build not just a good but a great facility which can be used for our equestrian clubs. And I guess the other point made is, you know, while we have one based at Aldinga and one at Morford Vale, the reality is that these people who are participating travel from all over. I mean, it's likely that we have people participating in Aldinga who travel from the other side of the city. You know, I think providing this facility and being able to consolidate both our efforts and our funding into this one facility is a much better way to move forward. Thank you.
Councillor Olsen, were you wanting to second that? Would you like to speak as seconder?
Look, I agree with everything that Councillor Greaves and Councillor Bray have said. You know, Councillor Peake, this may become to the point where they don't agree and we have to find something alternative. But before we even get to that point, I'm not happy with or not comfortable with setting a direction when we don't even know what the discussions will be. And as Councillor Bray points out, that funding is to get one facility. We want to have one asset to maintain. Whereas, you know, we go with what this original motion said, and we have two assets we now have to maintain. And, you know, I agree with everything that Councillor Bray and Councillor Greaves has said. Let the process go through, let the discussions continue, and let's see what comes out at the end of that, and then make some further decisions. This is just preempting a decision at the end. And I don't agree with this way forward. Thank you.
Councillor Jamieson.
Yeah, maybe the mover can answer this. It seems to me that both sides of this argument are just construed going in different ways. My understanding about listening is that we are trying to bring the two parties together. However, if that fails, there has to be an escape route, if you like, for one of the parties, because if they're going to come in to negotiate, they don't want, I think anybody that's coming in to negotiate doesn't want to say the deal's struck, you know, you're coming in for that's it. So I think it's a bit like Councillor Olsen just said, that down the track, you know, we can have a look at it, but it seems to me there is some money set aside, and then we can start negotiating with the parties, and I agree that they're probably going to be better coming together. But no one's going to be under pressure. The negotiations go ahead, and if the worst thing happens, and I think that would be, these people aren't going to be, you know, riding their horses down the street to find a home, you know. So I think that's what Councillor Peake's trying to do, is to give those people confidence that they would listen to, it'll be negotiated, and, you know, I think we've got about the best negotiating teams out. And basically, at some point, it's yes or no, and if it's no, then we've got a different argument. So I'll support this, because I think we need to give the people some confidence that they're not going to be deserted. Come to the party, negotiate, won't be deserted.
Councillor Brown, you've already debated. Do you have a question?
I'll clarify, because I'm just assuming everybody knows what I know. I've been involved in being thrown in the horse riding section.
Are you seeking clarification or providing clarification?
I'm clarifying. There is a
no. You've only got a question available to you. So, do you want to ask a question?
Point
Maybe
of
the staff can
clarification
help.
has been taken out of the Local Government Act, has it?
You have the opportunity to debate or ask a question.
I'm not
You've already
debating. I'm just
debated,
clarifying something that has
well,
been
you can seek clarification from
misunderstood. The clarification is that it's a riding club at Morphett Vale, which is very different to equestrian club. There is an equestrian club at Aldinga, very different to a riding club. It's different. It's like soccer and football.
Yeah. In regards to that, Councillor Brown, the CEO did suggest that if we were to drop the, can't change that, the case on Aldinga equestrian, sorry, I can't see it on my screen. Make a lower case for equestrian and clubs. That kind of resolves that. It's just referring to all of the groups at Aldinga.
My clarification is there's a very big difference in a riding club to an equestrian club.
Okay, that may be the case, but this is referring to all of the riding and equestrian activity at Aldinga and finding a new home for all of them.
Well, yeah, it's just that there's a conflict and there's a problem resolving. We've had one particular meeting, there may be another, but let them try and work it out to start with.
Okay. Councillor McMahon, you gave up your option to debate. You have a question? Go ahead.
All right, ready to go. I regret giving up that now. My question is to staff. The original funding for that $875,000, where does that come from? Does that come from funding that we've achieved through the Aldinga Sports Park for the Aldinga sports community?
Turn it on.
Through the Mayor, it's funding that was identified in the budget for Aldinga Sports Park redevelopment. It's council funding, and we'd always earmarked an allocation for relocation of the Aldinga riding and dressage clubs.
And we cannot force two clubs to set a memorandum of understanding. That's correct.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. And without it, there would not be a home for Aldinga. They'd be left in the dark.
If the groups weren't able to agree to relocate together, which we're suggesting the memorandum of understanding is the best instrument to achieve that, then they would currently need to find an alternative location.
Yeah, okay, so without this, they don't have a great bargaining chip. Thank you.
Councillor Peake, did you have a question?
It was very similar to, to Councillor, to Simon McMahon's, perhaps of the CEO referring to an email that he sent to me in reference to this. The question is, if the Aldinga Equestrian and Aldinga Riding Club don't sign the memorandum of understanding, let's say tomorrow they say they're not unwilling to continue negotiation, what then occurs, please? Because they don't have a home, because we've approved, all of us approved at the last SDC meeting, and we've just ratified that approval that we've accepted the Aldinga Sports Park master plan, which excludes the equestrian club.
Through you, Mayor Thompson. Councillor Pete's correct in that we have accepted the structure plan, and for the structure plan to be able to be fulfilled, it does require the riding and dressage clubs to move from the Aldinga Sports Park complex, and that's why we have the funds set aside to work with them to find a new location. I think councillors will remember the discussion and the paper, which clearly indicated that we need to resolve that move, otherwise we're unable to do the work associated in particular with the soccer and hockey clubs. So it's always been our intention that as part of the broader project that we would have to find a new location for those two clubs. And they've been very accommodating so far in the process. And obviously we've looked at Wilfred Taylor Reserve because it is an area where there's already a designated equestrian zone there. We've had meetings between the three parties at this point. I'd have to say my read of that is it's been generally positive, but I think all three clubs are coming to the realisation that we're putting three clubs in close proximity to one another and sharing a facility. And I think there are examples where that has worked, and there are examples probably where that hasn't worked. And just to correct the record, the example I used previously was actually Strathalbyn equestrian clubs, not football clubs.
Just a subsequent question, if you don't mind, Your Worship. Therefore, please, Mr. CEO, if they don't sign the Memorandum of Understanding, what will occur? What will happen to the Aldinga equestrian and Aldinga riding clubs?
Through you, Mayor Thompson. So in determining whether or not Wilfred Taylor Reserve could have been an option, we actually did look at a number of other sites as well. So we've already got some preliminary investigations about alternative sites. But to answer your question, Councillor Pete, if we are to pursue the Aldinga Sports Park complex, then we do need to be able to move those two clubs from that site. So we'll be looking at alternative sites if we can't accommodate the three clubs at Wilfred Taylor.
Just to clarify a point, the item of minutes from SDC actually just approved the Aldinga Sports Park Master Plan for Community Engagement with a report coming back in early 2021. It also approves a further update report to Council on the equestrian clubs and facilities by January 2021. There is nothing in the motion that says that we have endorsed that they're going to be kicked out of that location at all. Yes, we've discussed the fact that they are likely to need a new home, but there is no formal position of council endorsing that they will be moved on at this point. There's no reason why we couldn't, endorse our position as to where they will go in January when that report comes back to council. Councillor Bray for a question.
Thank you, Mayor. This is addressed to the CEO. Is it fair or unfair to say, and just speaking generally, that if a club is reluctant to cooperate in a move to consolidate where we are trying to look after ratepayers' funds and decides that they wish to be at another location, that they may have to bear some sort of financial cost in order to have the particular form of independence of site that they feel suits them?
Through you, Mayor Thompson, just so people are clear, at the present time there are three parties involved, and it's currently the party who are presently located at Wilfred Taylor Reserve, so they're already at that site, who have some concerns about the three parties being on that site. So they wouldn't necessarily incur a cost for the work not proceeding at that location. They'd be left with the facility that they've currently got at that site. In that instance, should that be the case, and I have to say, from what I'm hearing to date, the discussions are a lot more positive than negative, but there are still some concerns that need to be worked through. But be that as it may, if we're not able to consolidate at that site, then we would be utilising the funds that are available to relocate the two clubs from the Aldinga site to another site other than Wilfred Taylor, so that the club that's already at Wilfred Taylor wouldn't incur any cost.
But in a sense of not having a redevelopment, their desire to, if they chose not to cooperate, the penalty for that in a sense would be that funds that might have helped redevelop their site would be going elsewhere.
Through you, Mayor Thompson, yes, that'd be correct.
Councillor Tonkin.
This is a difficult one, and I agree with both sides, unfortunately, so it makes it very difficult. But we do have to understand too that MOU has to come through before anything else happens. Either one of those movements, that motions have got there. But I can understand too, Aldinga may be feeling that they are the poor cousins when they move to Morphett Vale. So if they move to Morphett Vale. So I guess that's why we do the MOU, to really make it understood that everyone has an equal say when we get there. And also that it will be a much better facility if they move there for both parties.
Councillor Peake, did you have a final question?
Thank you, Worship. I do, perhaps directed, well, to yourself or to the officer. I guess, therefore, a scenario could be that the Aldinga Equestrian Aldinga Rotary Club don't sign the Memorandum of Understanding. Will the Your Say community engagement process allow them to show that displeasure, perhaps, I use that word, I can't think of anything else, displeasure of perhaps moving in that Your Say process? In other words, will they, in just disagreeing with the master plan, is that enough? I mean, how will they clearly show their displeasure of not wishing to move from the site through the Your Say engagement community process, please?
I'll get staff to clarify, but they will have just as much right to comment as anybody else in the community as part of that consultation process. And I believe they're also in ongoing conversations with staff anyway. So I think we're pretty on top of how they're feeling, but all the clubs are feeling with the process. Matt?
But Your Worship, we make up the survey that goes out.
Through the Mayor, just to add to that. So we're in almost daily phone conversations with these groups as staff. So we're very aware of their current mood, about the likelihood of support or otherwise. And so you can absolutely have a guarantee from us that if any report that came back, it would be unequivocal about the club's positions, and they'll be made clear. Won't necessarily be down to the percentage or feedback. It'll be a good few paragraphs describing that concern if it's still of valid and of merit and worth sharing. So.
Thanks, members. We'll go to vote on the amendment. All those in favour? That's carried. Councillor Peake, would you like to close debate on the motion?
No, I think I've said enough. I guess if they don't sign the Memorandum of Understanding, then their position is quite clear from tonight's conversation. They stay at the Aldinga Sports Park. I just think that my proposed motion, unlike the view of some other elected members, meant that they didn't feel like they have a gun to their head, which they do feel like they do now, where they have no negotiating power. In other words, you know, they're of the belief the master plan that we're approving, although it's in engagement, they're not on the Aldinga Sports Park, and therefore they're now being not forced, but prodded to sign a Memorandum of Understanding when they have no option, because we quite clearly are telling them they haven't got a home unless they accept Wilfred Taylor Reserve. So I'll leave it with members.
Members will go to vote on the motion as amended. All those in favour? That's all those against. That's carried. Next item on our agenda is item 9.1, the long-term financial plan engagement. I believe we have an update on this report.
Okay. Moving updates. Sure. In your yellow folders, you'll see that there's an update that has come through. That is the changes to a few of the questions. The first one is the addition of a scale to question 7, which is people can rate that on from 0, very dissatisfied, to 10, very satisfied. Another update is in question 13, option D, we will add the words "and disadvantaged groups" to the examples. There will also be the addition of 2 extra questions as worded up here. The first one being overall, if you think of all the services and infrastructure that council provides, do you believe you're receiving value for money for the rates that you pay? And again, that will have a slider scale from 0 being poor value to 10, which is high value, and also the options of unsure and I don't really care. And then if people give a score of 5 or less, then an additional question will come up, which will be, please tell us the reason for your rating. Thank you.
Councillor Bray, you wishing to move the motion?
Thanks. And I'd like just to proceed that with a very brief question. On the list of people to be engaged with, I didn't see Onkaparinga Community Watch. Is it actually in that list? Where did I miss it? Can you help me with that? On page number?
Through the Mayor, it is it's on page number 11, and it's under the formal name, which is Onkaparinga Residents Association Council Watch, and then in brackets it says also known as Onkaparinga Watch.
Oh, thank you. That's why I missed it. And one final question. Because Mr. Houlihan took the trouble to come to a number of meetings here, can he be included on the list so that he knows when it comes out? I think he's earned the right to be a person of interest.
Through the Mayor, yes, we can add him to the list.
Thank you. Councillors, there are occasions when I like to think I know when to give up, and this is one of them. So I'm going to move the motion, but with one tiny change, and that is question 17. I just would like to change one word that says, so that my motion will include the change, do you have information that you would like to share with us? So just substitute views to information, and I'll now speak in favour of that, the motion. Councillors, quickly just getting to question 17, the reason for the change. I don't want people's views. People's views will be from the media, from their neighbours, opinions. That's fine, but why waste a question when we could actually ask them, do you have any information? And that information means we could get stuff back saying, I work in such and such industry, talking to my colleagues, there appears to be a roughly 30% drop in our sector. That could be really useful information. So I'd like to see us actually, I don't want feelings. I'd prefer to have something that's more approaching facts. So I hope you'll support me on this minor change, because for something so important to our city, where we're investing so much money in trying to help people, I think a few things approaching facts might be useful. And final comments, 3 final comments. First of all, at the last meeting, I think of all the comments, Councillor Brown's was the most insightful when she said that really the only way to do this is essentially out there knocking on doors. Well, a version of that is right, because what we have here in the engagement list is a fairly long list of rent seekers, and I don't know whether ultimately rent seekers are the best people to engage with, because I think what we need to engage with is the average person who's not necessarily looking for council to fund their recreation activities, but is just out there quietly paying their rates. And I think it would be handy to have some of those engaged with in such a process. So getting out and randomly getting 2,000 or 3,000 in letterboxes, asking people to do their very best to respond to us, I think is actually a good approach to get the broadest possible true indication of what people are thinking. Second point, I think this is the best possible example of an engagement where it could have been constructed with input from members of the community and not just elected members, because if you're going to question the community and make sure that they're not going to say, well, the council's asking these questions to get the answers they want. I don't think we are. I think this is a much better one than we've had in the past. So that's okay. But I still think that community involvement is always a good thing in constructing engagement tools. And my final comment was I think possibly it might be have got a little bit too long, trying to do a little bit too much maybe. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Councillor Smiliotis, wishing to second?
Yeah, go on then. I've just got a couple of questions. I'm not going to debate. I think we've done this a bit to death. My questions on the stakeholder group. Does Shine SA Noarlunga still exist?
Through the Mayor, I'm actually not sure. I'd have to check on that one.
That's fine, thank you. And the second question, same again on the stakeholder list. One thing I mentioned that I wanted to include council staff, obviously compulsory if they want to participate. And I do see staff here in directors group, financial group, but I'm talking about all council staff. Where do they sit in this group? Thank you.
Through the Mayor, there is a specific action in the engagement plan where it says CEO email to all staff. So in that staff, we'll include a link so staff can answer it directly.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Brown.
I have a number of questions. The first one is, can the elected members be sent something to link it onto their social media groups to have a say and encourage them to have a say, because that's slightly personal of the elected members if they ask their group to do that, and residents that they know, and ask them to share it with their residents. That often does happen if you ask people that. The second is, the questionnaire here is pretty long, and I'm looking at the groups. Do you ever, with this, and it's broad, and is there a way of working out who's responded to and who hasn't responded to, so that you can probably narrow down at some stage or other? Because I see a number of groups there that I know won't. I'd bet on it, and I don't bet on anything, but I would bet there'd be a lot there that won't respond, and it's an incredible list that it's going out to. So I'm just looking at us thinking smarter as to engaging in other ways, and some of these groups, community groups, are so busy doing what they're doing, they don't have 5 minutes to spare to do a lot of the correspondence.
All right, I think the question is there a way we can tell who on the list has responded? And yeah, okay.
Through the Mayor, in response to your first question, yes, absolutely. We can provide all elected members with a link that they can share on their social media or however they see fit to encourage people to respond. In response to your second question, it's not possible, it wouldn't be possible to tell which of the groups have responded to the survey because the survey is anonymous. But it's absolutely, I guess, at each group's discretion whether they choose to respond to the survey.
And finally, we have an area where the suburban residents that you are, and suburban residents if you're a non-resident, there could be an option of capitalising some information that could be very useful. Why not include ratepayers that live and invest locally? We have people that have got businesses in the area and they live in the area, and it's some stats that I think we could do with that someone who lives or got a business somewhere else or whatever it might be, is building on the knowledge of who lives and a bit more about the economics of it.
Through the Mayor, we do ask right at the beginning of the survey whether people are residents and ratepayers or ratepayers, and then at the end whether they, if they say that they're a ratepayer but not a resident, which suburb they have their property in. We don't go down to the details of whether that's they have a business here or not as well, though.
But if we had the option at some stage, maybe not. It's a pity in this because it's all about economics of knowing people that actually have a business here as well as live in here.
Through the Mayor, perhaps we could consider that in other surveys, such as our community survey. We could look at including a question about whether people actually run a business here as well.
Councillor Peet.
Just a quick one. I'm not exactly agreeable to changing that word in question 17 from views to information. Do you have views that you would like to share with us regarding the impact COVID-19 has had on the city on Kapringa? I just find that people's views will include information they've sourced from others or from the media. That's what people do with their views. They include the information. But I think in putting it rigidly by asking for information implies a rigid approach. And I don't think people will respond accordingly. I just think they'll see that very authoritarian and just, well, I would, and just, no, I haven't got any information. Got a view, but I haven't got any information. So yeah, I guess I'll put an amendment to change it back as printed.
Councillor Peet, you've just debated before you've raised that, sorry, so you're not able to put an amendment now. Have you finished your debate?
Apparently.
There doesn't appear to be further debate. Councillor Bray, would you like to close debate? No, we'll go to vote. All those in favour? That's carried. The next item is 9.2, Local Government Finance Authority Support Package for Councils. Councillor Bray, wishing to move? Go ahead.
Yeah, as written.
Councillor Brown, wishing to second? No debate. Councillor O'Brien, wishing to debate?
Not a debate, just really a question. Obviously, it's a no-brainer as well. My question is, are there any other costs that are associated with taking the advantage of the Local Government Finance Authority and going to a refinance rate at a much lower rate? But are there any other costs that maybe we haven't captured that might be part of that? And a second part to the question, and is this an ongoing practice that we're continually looking for these sorts of opportunities at a time when interest rates are at their lowest ever?
Through you, Mayor Thompson. Councillor O'Brien, no, there are no additional costs to this. This is a support package that has been put out by the Local Government Financing Authority. So there are no sort of hidden costs or break fees that would be associated with breaking a fixed loan, for example. In response to your second question, yes, we are continuing to look at what other opportunities there are to reduce our our debt servicing costs.
Thank you. Councillor Bray, I assume you don't wish to close. We'll go to vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Move to item 9.3, presentation of the draft annual report 2019-20. Is there any updates to this report? No, there's no updates. Members, Councillor Greaves wishing to move. Would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Brown wishing to second. Would you like to speak as seconder?
My pages. No, not on that one. Yep.
No, nothing to add? Not this one? Great. Councillor Greaves wishing to close. We'll go to vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Item 9.4 is the draft general purpose financial statements for the period ending 30 June 2020. There's no updates to this report. Members, what is your wish? Someone wishing to move? Deputy Mayor Jeff Eaton, do you wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Brown wanting to second this one? Yes, go ahead.
Looking at page 12, summary of significant accounting policies continued with regards to the use of useful life estimate, and comes into question that I've had some community concern with regards to our play equipment, and that was going to be looked at some stage. But another incident's happened recently within the last week with bus stops, and there is a bus stop in the Knox, 2 bus stops in the Knox ward that are fairly substantial, solid features that have been heritage built, and it looks they've had a section taken out of them because it looks like they're going to pull them to pieces and put other ones there. And the community is this. To me, they're only just 20 years old and very good quality. I think everyone can go and have a look at Old South Road, Old Ranella, and have a look at the 2 bus stops there. Why are they being renovated or removed and replaced within 20 years, just 20 years, where they're quite a solid structure?
Through you, Mayor Thompson, Councillor Brown, I note that that was a EM inquiry and an EM inquiry response, and you followed that back up today. I don't have the information around those specific bus stops, but we will be following that up out of session in any case. So with regards to general life of assets, I think bus shelters are 20 to 25 years in general terms. But then we will look at the site specifics of an individual shelter. I'm pretty sure that those 2 were also identified as part of the federal government stimulus for replacement as well as those adopted projects. But we'll get back to you tomorrow with the information.
Right, because the community are rather concerned about it. And I've got another question. Where are we? Corporate credit cards, page 35. Is there a change in processes in 2019 to 2020? Why it's almost double?
If I may, through you, Mayor Thompson, look, they do not relate to expenditure, but more to the available credit limits we have. I don't have that specific information at hand, and I'd like to take that on notice and come back to you.
Fine. And with regards to the current interest-bearing loans and borrowings, are the ONCA 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and MPF 6, are they some of the targeted ones that we're going to change the interest rates on, as well as the non-current ones?
Again, if I may, through you, Mayor Thompson, I think this is partly Councillor O'Brien's question before about which facilities that we might be transplanting this cheaper debt with. Councillor O'Brien, I think, was picking up on the fact that there are break fees and there are costs associated with converting our fixed debt over to our new facilities. So we cannot convert those ones without a significant cost impost. So what we will be converting is our current variable loans that are currently paying 2.2% over to the cheaper rate. These types of facilities are designed to have disincentives to break them early because of the long-term nature of them. However, having said that, once we do, these do come up for expiry, we will be looking at supplanting them with cheaper debt going forward.
So we're locked into them, like in the past, we've been locked into high interest rates and it was too much of an impost to pay out. We were stuck with it until it went through. So
that's precisely.
That's exactly what they are. Yeah. And we able to grammatically fix the first page?
If I may, through you, Mayor Thompson, I'm still reviewing that, Councillor Brown.
Thank you.
Councillor Eaton, are you wanting to close debate? We'll go to vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Next item is 9.5, the Southern Region Waste Resource Authority Annual Report. There's no update to this report. Members, what is your wish? Would someone wish to move? Councillor Greaves has written, wishing to speak to that. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor O'Brien, are you wishing to speak to that? There's no debate on that. We'll go to vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Brings us to 9.6, which is the Council Solutions General Purpose Financial Statements for the period ending 30 June 2020. Also no updates to this. Would someone like to move this recommendation? Councillor McMahon wishing to move as written. Would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Tonkin wishing to second. There's no speakers for the motion. We'll go to vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Move to 9.7, which is the proposed suburb boundary realignment, and there is an update to this report.
Excuse me, through you, Mayor Thompson. Members would have received earlier today an update and some clarification around some information for this proposed boundary realignment of the suburbs of Seaford Meadows and Port Noarlunga South. We had assumed that the application was made by Higginbotham. That is in fact not the case. It was initiated by the Office of the Surveyor General as a result of the proposed subdivision on that allotment. So you'll note that Higginbotham have in fact lodged an objection to the proposed boundary realignment of those suburbs, which is contrary to the assumptions made by the department at the time. So that information is in front of you, but we have suggested that the recommendation remain the same.
Councillor Peat, you wishing to move?
I so do.
Would you like to speak to the motion?
No.
Councillor Bray wishing to second? Would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Brown.
Thank you. I'm glad you clarified that with Higginbothams, because I thought that's a odd thing for a developer to optimise their funding. So Higginbothams, they don't have a right of appeal and this will just happen?
Through you, Mayor Thompson, if so noted under my email today, anybody can object to the process, depending on the decision of the Surveyor General. The department may either choose to accept the objection and then a new process will have to be followed. So if they go with the Higginbotham proposal, they will then restart the process for us to comment on. So there's no appeal process as such, but they may choose to accept Higginbotham's proposal and then re-notify.
So there's no opportunity for us to be impartial.
You, Mayor Thompson, sorry, can you just clarify what you mean by impartial?
Well, we're saying that we have no objection to the suburb boundary realignment, which is basically, I guess, supporting the Surveyor General, whereas I know if I was Higginbotham, I'd be probably not agreeable to it, which is obviously not. And I just would like council to be seen to be taking sides. You don't see it as that?
Through you, Mayor Thompson, you could change the recommendation or the decision such that it abides by the decision of the Attorney General, regardless of the outcome, or you can object. It's entirely up to the council to make that decision.
Okay.
Councillor de Graaf.
Yeah, I think my questions are similar to Councillor Brown's. Do you think that the City of Onkaparinga should be seen to be supporting the developers? So perhaps.
Through you, Mayor Thompson.
No, that's what I'm saying. But
we're not
perhaps we
supporting
should be offering. Sorry, I didn't word it very well. Perhaps we should be offering some support, and so perhaps mentioning in the letter that Hickenbotham's stance. Because I mean, time and time again, I've heard it here that the council should be trying to get developers to want to invest and build in our area, but we're kind of taking the opposite view in this case. So is there something we could mention in the letter that to the Surveyor General that, you know, Hickenbothams have written to the council and have these concerns, and that the council doesn't have any particular stance one way or the other, which is what you've said in your recommendation.
As I, sorry, through you, Mayor Thompson, as I responded to Councillor Brown, the recommendation could be amended such that the letter to the Surveyor General is that we abide by the decision of the Surveyor General, whatever outcome that may be.
All right, I'll just leave it for now. It's okay, thank you.
Councillor O'Brien.
Mine's just a question of the officer. Renee, just in terms of the original letter from the Surveyor General, it identified obviously that the whole of the subdivision be under the title of Seaford Meadows. I was just reading the letter and it just said that that the realignment will provide better land administration whilst eliminating any confusion for emergency response services to locate the premises. Is that a genuine concern from council that emergency services or our officers would have trouble in locating the particular area that needs assistance?
Through you, Mayor Thompson, that commentary is equally applicable to the alternative proposal from Hickenbotham. We actually brought this to the attention of Hickenbotham some years ago, that this boundary alignment that dissects the subject land of the proposed subdivision may actually present issues in terms of one side of the road being in Port Noarlunga South, the other side of the road being in Seaford Meadows. So yes, it does address those genuine issues.
Yeah, the only reason I asked that is it's actually quite close to home for me. I lived in Craigburn Heights, just off Blacks Road, which was actually under Aberfoyle Park, and we had a fire in our backyard. We called for the fire brigade. They drove straight past, and our location was 9 Monarco Circuit, Aberfoyle Park. They went to 9 Monaro Court, Aberfoyle Park, and obviously there was no fire to extinguish there. We nearly lost our house. So I think it is significant in terms of if there are any issues.
Councillor Jamieson.
Well, that was quick. Look, around that area, there's some sensitivities happening because we're still waiting for Hickenbotham to go to SCAP. If we haven't asked people of Port Noarlunga South, a while ago, some people decided they would name the suburb Southport because that's where the beach is, and that went over like a lead balloon. That didn't work at all for anybody. So we've got these sensitivities. We've still got Save the Kangaroos. We've got all these things. I suggest we need to talk to the community and not sort of give the, what's the term here, council delegate to the Director of Planning to write and advise the Surveyor General that council has no objection. Council might have no objection, but the people might have an objection. And that they've been struggling and fighting I forget when we passed through the stuff about Seaford Meadows. So I suggest we just get out there and put this question, because Another thing that happens is that the name of a suburb sometimes changes the value of a house. And is Seaford Meadows going to be an attractive name for Port Noarlunga South? I think that there will be issues there. So I think that we just park this and come back when we've got some for the rest. So we've got a motion up there. So can we move a motion that this?
Sorry, just before you go any further, Councillor Jamieson, I've just got a staff comment on that.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Thompson. The department requires us to provide comment by the 20th of November. So that's the end of this week. We could amend the recommendation or the resolution such that we identify that this is potentially a contentious issue and that we seek an extension of time to consult with the community, or alternatively, that the department consults with the adjoining neighbours or the community.
I'll move the first of those consultations.
Did he ask a question? I thought he debated because he was talking about it. Councillor Jamieson, you've already debated, but somebody else may wish to move an amendment to that effect. Oh, sorry. Okay, you can complete your debate if you like. Go ahead, complete your debate.
Basically, I think that this, you might think it's a simple thing. There is 2,700 people in Port Noarlunga South, 29 Port Noarlunga, and then you've got Seaford Meadows going to have 700 well. So we're talking about a very big slice of our city. So I think the first motion you put out, I think that we should tread carefully. And I remember when we tried to make Willand Street, Willand Street one way, there was a huge fight with people in Nelson because they didn't want all the cars coming down their streets to Lynch. So there is a lot of things that happen in that area. So I think you just need to push it over to the government, let them take it away.
Councillor Peake, did you have a question?
No, I was going to move an amendment as per Councillor Jamieson's suggestion, or should I say the officer?
You're the mover of this current motion, Councillor Peake.
That's a good point.
So, if this gets voted down, then an alternative motion can be raised unless somebody else is wishing to move an amendment that hasn't already debated. Okay, well, Councillor Peake, would you like to close debate before we go to vote?
I hope members vote this down.
Okay, members will go to vote. All those in favour? All those against? Oh, hang on. All those against, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Count, Richard. Yeah. Why am I struggling to count this? Everyone, sorry, can I just ask again, all of those in favour, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Did you vote, Councillor de Graaf?
There's one abstaining.
All right. Okay, we're going to start again. Everyone hands down. All of those in favour, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All of those against. Okay, so that's a split vote. So I'm going to vote against the motion. So that's lost. Someone like to raise an alternate motion? Councillor Jamieson.
We had two options. I think the first option you gave me, I think that was the one I think makes the most sense at this time. So I'll move that one.
Can you give us some words? Did you want to provide some words for your alternate motion? Or are you just saying that you... Oh, sorry, Renee, did you have a suggestion?
I can give some words.
Yes, go ahead.
Yep, through you, Mayor Thompson. If I understand your request, Councillor Jamieson, something along the lines of that council advised the Surveyor General that the proposal is potentially contentious for our community, and we therefore request that the Surveyor General consult with the community before making a decision. Something along those
I
lines.
move that way.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Peat. Councillor Peat, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No.
No. Doesn't appear to be any further debate. Councillor Jamieson, do you wish to close debate? We'll go to vote. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. Pete. Members, it's 20 to 9. Does you wish to move us off to a break? Councillor Smiliotis, seconded Councillor Jamieson. All those in favour? It's carried. We'll be back in 10 minutes. So back at 10 to 9, please. We'll need to nominate some new members for this committee. If we have more than 3, then we'll go to vote. So if someone would like to kick us off, you'd like to put yourself forward as a proxy? Are there, Councillor Bray?
I'd like to nominate Councillors Eaton and also Councillor O'Brien, please, for the 2 members. And I'd like to speak to that if I can. Can I speak to that?
Sorry,
Mayor
just a
Thompson?
moment, Councillor Bray. Before we lock in that as a moved and second motion, is there any other nominations that would like to put their names forward? Councillor de Graaf wishing to put your name forward also? So we're going to take a vote on the members, and then once we have the outcome of that, we can move a motion with those names. Yeah. So you're each going to get given a slip of paper, and if you can write 3 names on that slip.
Well, the last one at the bottom with the proxy member.
No. So the suggested approach was to write down 3 names each, and so then the top 3 scoring names become the members, and the lowest scoring of those 3 names becomes the proxy.
So you want to be a full member, Bill?
3 names, because there's 3 positions. Councillor de Graaf, are you nominating as a proxy or as a full member? Okay, well, we can lock in then Councillor Jamieson as a proxy.
Yeah, that's right.
And just need to write down 2 names. So 2 of the 3. So you'll be choosing 2 out of Councillors Eaton, O'Brien and de Graaf. Councillor Peat and Olsen, can you please send your vote to Karen Ryan, just the 2 names in a comment? Question from Councillor Eaton.
Yep, thank you. I just noticed in the report we talk about ordinary members, but actually when we go to the terms of reference, we talk about elected members and independent members. What I don't want to be doing is seeing that we're giving, we don't have a definition or an indication in the terms of reference as an ordinary member. One would assume if they apply that normal interpretation, that would be those other than the chair. And if that was the case, we're voting ourselves about a $600 payment for each meeting, which I oppose because the independents get paid, but not the elected members. So I think that needs to be amended in the terms of reference.
Is this a question, Councillor Eaton, or are you happy? You can debate this when we get to the motion.
Yeah,
if you
okay,
like.
right, yeah, okay, right, okay.
Councillor De Graaf, do you have a question too while we're doing this, or yep, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, just a couple of questions. So just to clarify what Jeff was asking, the elected member roles unpaid?
That's correct.
Okay. Also, that I was the proxy on this group before. Can I just ask why it's changed now that there's less actual members? Because we had 3 before and a proxy. The legislation demanded that it goes down to 2 and a proxy?
That's correct, Councillor De Graaf. In anticipation of the legislation, the Statutes Amendment Bill that will be coming into play next year, it is basically saying that there be the RVET be comprised of 3 independent. They'd be comprised of. Trying to think of the exact wording. That the majority of the members of the committee must be persons who are not members of any council. So and the regulations say that it must be in between 3 and 5. So therefore it's proposed that there be 2 elected members with 3 independent members, therefore making the majority not council members.
Okay, so there is no option to have 3 councillors following that? Okay.
No.
All right, I just wanted to ask about this actual process. So as I was the proxy on this group, and I've attended a few of the meetings, not a whole lot, but I have been following things. Wouldn't it be more democratic that the 3 people who everyone picks, they are then in order of first and second, and then the third one will be made the proxy, rather than just the proxy is voted on as a proxy?
Well, that is actually what I suggested, but we only had 1 nomination for a proxy anyway, and you indicated that you weren't interested in being a proxy. So the votes have come back, and Councillor Eaton and O'Brien have been elected to those 2 positions. So Councillor Bray, I'll come back to you if you wish to move that motion. So moving that Councillor Eaton and O'Brien with Councillor Jamieson as proxy. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
Councillors, yeah, I just urge you to support this because I've got the impression that Councillor Eaton and Councillor O'Brien have been very engaged in this committee, but with independent minds, and I think that's a very valuable thing and a step forward for our council to have this independent thought approach to their role on the committee. So I'd like to see that continue. Thank you.
Councillor Brown wishing to second. Would you like to speak as seconder?
I'd just like to thank the councillors that are representing the committee. It's of all the years that we've had this committee, it's the most efficiency that we've had, and I love the reports that we are getting, and thank you very much, guys.
Deputy Mayor Eaton.
Yeah, just the matter that I raised in the terms of reference at page 5, we've got membership of the committee comprises 2 elected members and 3 independent representatives. Could we have them as 3 ordinary independent? Because we talk about the salary, the payment being paid to ordinary members, and if you talk about ordinary members, those that are the elected members and the independents are ordinary members. Just need to clarify that point. Thanks.
So through you, Mayor Thompson, that's more an error in the text of the report. That
terminology doesn't appear in the recommendation, nor does it appear in the terms of reference. And in fact, when members are appointed, paid independent members, be they the chairperson or an ordinary member or whatever however you'd like to refer to them, the resolution appointing them sets their remuneration, and you'll actually see that in the recommendation that's to come later on the agenda.
Yep. Okay. Great.
Councillor de Graaf.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to show my support for Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Eaton. Just to say that I agree that they've been doing a really good job the whole way through. So my interest in this group certainly doesn't take away from my support for them. Also, I would like to just suggest a slight change to the mover, if he would consider this, just to take into account the things that Councillor Eaton said, to have a dot point 4 in there that just clarifies for people reading it, because I did have this same concern and confusion that Councillor Eaton had, that it just seemed like it was councillors getting paid. So I would like to put in a dot point 4 there that just clarifies that, just for any members of the public reading it. So number 4, clarifying that elected member roles are unpaid on that board. If Councillor Bray is open to it. All right, thank you.
Councillor Brown, are you comfortable with that as well? For this role. Thanks. Councillor Brady, wish to close debate? Thanks, members. We'll go to vote. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried unanimously. Congratulations to Councillors Eaton, O'Brien and Jamieson. We'll now move on to item 9.9, Strategic Asset Management Plan, Draft Endorsement and Community Engagement. And there's an update for this report.
Through you, Mayor Thompson, yes, there is. As per the emails sent this afternoon, the tile on page 24 of the plan and 298 of the agenda will be adjusted to reflect the supply and demand for baseball pitches to be, we have the right amount rather than oversupply.
Members, is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Greaves wishing to speak to the motion as written. Is there a seconder? Councillor Brown wishing to second.
And I'd request of the officers that we reduce the use of euphemisms in our reports. I've got to keep referring to the front page when I go to camp and SAMP and all of that sort of thing.
Councillor de Graaf.
I would like to move an amendment, please.
Go ahead.
So in the executive summary, just to bring you to the position first. So in the executive summary, where the consultation period is referring to 21 days. So my motion would be, sorry, we'll just delete a bit, that the consultation period is 42 days. And the report coming back to council is in February. And if I could possibly ask for a viewpoint from the staff, if that would work. And then I would like to speak to that.
It's an amendment. Yeah. So just clarifying, you're adding that point to the original motion in your amendment?
Yes.
Well, the change to point 3 is February rather than January, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So changing point 3 to February and a fourth dot point to say that the consultation period will be 42 days. Council staff able to confirm if that's achievable?
Through you, Mayor Thompson, the legislation is quite clear that the SAMP needs to be endorsed by council by February. So if we are to incorporate the community consultation in the document by that time, then there will need to be some subsequent reports before that date. So the 42 days will make that time frame extremely difficult to achieve.
What I would like to do is extend the timeframe out, because 21 days is the legal minimum requirement, or legislated, I should say, minimum requirement. And in light of everything that we've heard from the community, I'd like to see if the council is in support of extending some of these engagement periods out for longer. So could you make a suggestion on how this can work, given that sentiment? It doesn't have to be 42 days, it could be 30. I'm just not sure of the council date meetings.
There we go. Through you, Mayor Thompson. I think the community consultation process that we've recommended through this report is quite simple in nature. So the questions are only 4. So the actual process of engagement will be relatively straightforward and simple. I think that would provide the community a reasonable amount of time to be able to answer the shortness of the questions.
All right, well, look, given the tight time frame that it needs to be back in, it's not going to make it in time if I did it for February. I will withdraw my amendment, but I would like the council to just take this into consideration, that with future things, it would be good if we could look at longer engagements in general than the 21 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Greaves, wish to close debate? Right, we'll go to vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 9.10 is a proposal to prohibit trucks on Saddlebags Road, Kangarilla. Don't believe there's any updates to this report. Oh, there is. Sorry, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Thompson, as per the legislation, we are required to consider all feedback prior to the timeframe of this report being submitted. We've received 2 responses since the report was submitted to council. A resident of Cut Hill Road requesting an additional copy of the letter which they had misplaced. This has been emailed to them. A resident of Saddlebags Road indicating support for the proposed restriction of trucks, however, also requesting other additional safety concerns be addressed. These additional concerns can be followed up via separate investigations.
Councillor Bray.
I'd like to move it as written.
Do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, councillors, I was going to ask for a slight amendment to that to push for additional signage on the two bends, because unless you've actually driven this road, you just cannot appreciate how it's just impossible to appreciate how difficult those 2 bends are. But staff have assured me that actually 2 senior staff, both Kirk and Morgan, both actually use that road, and possibly, look, I don't know, maybe even out of self-preservation, they both have said that they'll be working hard to get the best form of additional signage on those 2 bends that can be achieved. So look, I'm happy to accept their assurance on that. So just ask council to support it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bray. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Smiliotis wishing to speak? There doesn't appear to be any more debate. Councillor Bray, do you wish to close? Right, we'll go to vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Next item is 9.11, Aldinga School Drainage Infrastructure Deed. Are there any updates to this report? No updates. Members, what is your wish? Someone like to move this motion? Councillor Bray wanting to move? You wish to speak to the motion? You want to second the motion, Councillor Jamieson? You didn't want to speak, Councillor Bray?
No.
Well, there's no further debate. We'll go to vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Next item is the Witten Bluff Base Trail Engagement Outcomes and Section 48 Prudential Report. Councillor McMahon, are you wishing to move?
Thompson, yes. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Additional dot points.
Do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Thompson. Members, only a fortnight ago, elected members gathered in this very chamber to debate this very topic. We dedicated around 90 minutes of that meeting addressing the same topic we are addressing tonight. The same topic we addressed in our 2020-21 business plan, and indeed from reading this report, the same topic we've addressed since 1998. It is now time to get on with the job and finally deliver for the people of Onkaparinga. Make no mistake, this has been a community-led project from the very start. A project that has received the highest level of local support, with literally thousands of people and businesses getting behind this vision. Interestingly, people both for and against this project agreed that the project will bring more visitors to our area, injecting much needed funds into our local economy. It is important to add some context to this discussion. The Witten Bluff Base Trail is just one section of our coastal park and the state government's Coast Park initiative. Funding for all other sections of the coastal park is based on delivering one complete and continuous coastal park. This section is the last section needed to link O'Sutherland's Beach and Moana. Without the Witten Bluff Base Trail, we do not have a complete and continuous coastal park, and we are devaluing infrastructure we have already invested in at a high cost to our ratepayers. On top of that, Council has already spent $265,000 on this project. To turn around now at this late stage, it would, in my mind, be a gross waste of public funds. From walking the Esplanade and from reading the report, it is abundantly clear that the top path is simply unachievable. The public would not stomach council spending huge amounts of money purchasing the waterfront land required, and they certainly would not have an appetite for a one-way road. Incredibly, since 1998, community support for this project has been consistently high. The engagement history has been robust and continuous, but engagement should never be simply a matter of ticking a box. It is important that we recommit to continuous engagement with our First Nations people throughout this entire project, and we must continue to build relationships and dialogue with Kaurna elders as the rightful custodians of this land. Storytelling and education is an absolute fundamental component to this project, securing this knowledge for future generations. Finally, it is important to note, as I've mentioned before, that this funding for the project has been received from the state government as part of COVID stimulus. Infrastructure like this is going to be the backbone of our state's economic recovery. Both council and the state government have formally announced this project, and our community now expects us to get on with the job. So members, I urge you to vote this motion.
Councillor Bray, you wishing to second?
Oh, not quite.
Councillor Jamieson wishing to second?
Yes, I would.
Can you press your button and I? Go
Let's
ahead.
go. Now, the first thing I think I'd ask you all to there's two pictures in the actual, all the stuff you got. The first one is the rocks and it's along the stretch, and the next one is the exit from the actual path into Port Noarlunga. Look, it seems every time I've opened my inbox over the last few days, or more than that, there's been claims, consultation, transparency, flora and fauna, and pathway around the bluff. Many of the suggestions have been misleading and are perhaps designed to delay the build. Through this fog that's been thrown up, I will continue to support building this path, thus supporting the wishes of a large majority of the residents. Firstly, let's look at the number. 1,089 residents petitioned the council in January 2017 to build the Wittenbuff Blaze Trail. On February 2019, a further 1,000 residents petitioned the federal government to support the construction of the trail. In 2015, the Beach Road pop-up the first choice was complete the Wittenbuff Base Trail. That's over quite a few times. More recently, in September 2020, concept design presented to the community in your survey, 81 people or 64% supported the build of the Wittenbuff Base Trail. On Facebook, 943 people applied, 99% had positive reactions. May 20, funding was announced on the Facebook, 837 people, 99.6% had positive reactions. March and April, Southern Adelaide Economic Development Board, Christie's Beach Business and Tourist Association, Port Noarlunga Business and Tourist Association provide letters of support to the project. Later engagement hit the history. In 1998, 78 people responded to build the base trail. 2005, consultation with the Ghana Heritage Board project was received favourably. 2008, Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Survey, including 8 members of the Ghana community, had noted the absence of any Aboriginal sites on that area. Clearly, there is strong support for building the base trail, and that support actually goes back to the old city of Noarlunga, which only Kirk would probably be able to remember. So some of the myths that have been promulgated out there. I think the gem is the claim that linking Port Noarlunga and Christie's Beach would supply the opportunity for residents to access the 2 local pubs. Really, that's just ridiculous. There are no rocks proposed for the limestone shelf. The toe of the bluff in that area is protected by the reef. And that's been going on about all the rocks, and you've got the actual picture there that shows these. Moving on. I've never said in this, as I've been aware since from memory, 2008, that the revetment was not extended because the toe was protected by the reef. The base trail is not connected to the cliff or the bluff of the bluff. It's freestanding, if you like. The design process will consider how the base trail structure can be integrated into the landscape. There's been a lot of questions about how this would look, so that the structure is dominated by the landscape from key views, like from the jetty. The cliff backdrop is 20 to 25 metres, so it's easier to see that trail would just merge into that. The base trail entrance to Port Noarlunga has 2 options. They're here, and we heard some sensitivities tonight that we'd probably need to look at that, of which will be integrated into the landscape. Recent consultation with Ghana started on the 27th of September, and if you look at the record, it is continuous as we speak.
That's time, Councillor Jamieson. Do you need to wrap up?
I've done.
Great. Councillor
Perfectly timed.
De Graaf.
Thank you. I would like to move a formal motion that this matter be deferred until engagement with Ghana and other stakeholders is complete.
Just vote it down.
To be adjourned, sorry.
Moving a formal motion to adjourn the
Mhm.
matter till when?
Until engagement with Ghana and other stakeholders is complete. It shouldn't take too long.
Might want to clarify what complete,
Okay.
no,
and
not in debate, in your wording.
There is no
Can
debate with a formal
you
motion.
need to adjourn a
Yes.
particular timeframe?
Yes, well, I've got a number 2, which is the CEO immediately commence round.
There's no number 2 on a formal motion, so if you
Okay.
can
Yeah,
just
that
adjourn to a particular time frame.
yeah is complete within
You
3
could say
months.
until
Yeah,
this time to
within-
allow, yeah,
within 3 months.
until. Okay.
At the latest.
Okay, so there's no debate on a formal motion, so I'll seek a seconder. Is there a seconder for the formal motion? No? There's no seconder for the formal motion.
All right.
Councillor Bray wishing to debate the motion, the original motion?
Councillors, I don't have any objection to most of that, possibly to number 5, and I possibly won't support it because of number 5, but I think having seen the feedback that we got from the community, we looks like of the serious feedback, building a trail would satisfy 65% of the respondents roughly. But I think it's probably possible, looking at the scope of the design, to probably satisfy 95% of the respondents. My point is that of those not in favour of the trail as it is, a lot of those not in favour would probably come on board if it was a little bit lighter on the landscape and it was a little bit less expensive. This point about the continuous trail, I'll make the point that we are looking at a continuous coastal trail, but if you look at the section at Marion, that's I'm not sure what the width at Marion is. The cliff face section at Marion, that's probably under 2 metres wide. I'm not sure what that width is there, but as I say, this was the first real consultation, I think, proper consultation, and it's brought all this out of the woodwork. And I'd like to be able to take everything into consideration by moving the process of consideration a little bit further in terms of having a look at the design scope. I don't take much notice of the Facebook things. I mean, I could probably get a 95% Facebook response by putting something up saying that we've got funding from the federal government to build a bridge to Kangaroo Island. But is everyone, yeah, that'd be great. It's only when you stop to think about it that you realise that there's probably implications in doing that. So I don't take a lot of notice of that. I like the idea of a walking trail rather than a universal use trail. It's quite in line with what happens in the Marion segment, and it'd be lower cost, lower impact, and depending on the skillfulness of the design, probably lower maintenance as well. And I just make the point that the Marion section, cliff face section, is, I guess you could regard that style of walking trail, and also I add also the Hallett Cove Conservation Park section as well. Very much lighter on the landscape than the standard coastal park 3 metre track, and built with regard to the environment. I think that's the key. So I'll leave it at that, and I will be supporting the notice of motion of Councillor de Graaf just to have another look at the scope of design if elected members consider that's further.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of questions of the officers, if they're able to help me out. Number one, from the deputations, the thing that hit me was concerns with safety, those waves crashing across the Whitten Bluff. So I guess in a way, I'm looking for some reassurance that the elements of safety will be significantly considered in the construction of the trail. If you're able to give me a response to that.
Through the Mayor, yes, Councillor O'Brien, that's something that is top of mind in our planning to date. And also consideration with the waves and the wave forces in our engineering of the structure itself. And there's some information provided to that effect in the email sent to Councillor Jamieson by Kirk Richardson on Friday at 5:06 p.m. So it talked about some of the work that we've had to establish some of our design height and criteria to ensure that it is able to be a long-term asset in a pretty hostile environment. And along with that, the safety of the public with balustrading and the like would be a key consideration.
Okay, thank you. And a further question, I noticed dot point 3 that receives and considers the Whitten Bluff Base Trail Section 48 Prudential Report as per legislative requirement. So obviously that's what we're doing here, and the Section 48 Prudential Report is obviously significant. Are you able to provide me with just some information around the purpose of the Section 48 Prudential Report, and what are the qualities that we're looking for in terms of it being put together, the actual people that were identified to put together this Prudential Report? In this case, I think it was BRM Advisory. I'm just looking at getting a full understanding of the purpose of that report.
Through you, Mayor Thompson. Our Prudential Report is, as said in the document, it's a legislative requirement, and it's really to make sure that all the governance and procedures in delivering the project are taken into account to make sure that we're doing the project in the best possible way.
Okay, and a further question. So the principal of BRM Advisory is Mark Booth, the chair of SWARA. Is that correct, or?
Through the chair, I believe so, yes.
Okay, so just in terms of process, the process of appointing BRM Advisory, is there a procurement policy? Is there a process? Is there a certain amount of money that we must go by? And please don't get me wrong, I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm just looking at process in terms of, obviously we have a close relationship with Mark in terms of his involvement with SWARA. I'm just trying to make sure that that we're going about it the right way.
No relationship.
Through you, Mayor Thompson. Yeah, under our procurement policy, then if it's under $20,000, we can go to a single source. So Mark has prepared several Prudential reports for us in the past of a high quality. So we've certainly gone down that track on this one.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor de Graaf.
Yeah, just a few quick questions and then I'll do some debate after, if that's okay. How much does that Prudential report cost, by the way?
Through you, Mayor Thompson, the Prudential report was worth $10,000.
Okay. Now, if I wanted to refer that on to have any of those mechanisms of how it was referred, or just looking at anything else like that, how would I go about referring that over to RVEC if there were some concerns that I had with some things that were in the report and the process overall?
So through the Mayor, look, it's open to Council to refer any process that falls within RVEC's terms of reference to RVEC for consideration. If Council's minded to do so, they may. Of course, given the nature of the motion before you, that may present some difficulty.
All right, thank you for that advice. Also, just another question for staff. Like, with all these reports that we got, all the reports that Councillor Brown has been calling for, technical reports, the PACPOI report, Ghana engagement reports, all these things that I've been also asking for quite some time, Councillor Olsen requested, and they all came just 3 days ago. That was 17 different, really quite big reports. I'm just wondering why that information wasn't given to us like 2 years ago or even back in May.
Through the Mayor, so a number of the reports have been made available, have been presented to Council in recent times through other reports, through formal Council reports or SDC reports. There are a number of historical reports that we've, particularly the PACPOI reports, that we had trouble locating and weren't seen because of the history of them as immediately relevant to some of the discussions that were going on. But understanding the concerns and questions being raised by elected members, we sourced those and have been adding them to the elected member website as the requests have come through. So there's been no intent to withhold that information or to give it to you at the last minute. We've been trying to steadily provide those via the EM website as we're able to source them and as the requests have come through.
Is that the same with the engagement reports? Because there were several there, the ones about 2008, and they actually directly contradict what's been approved under the Prudential, and I don't really have enough time to do all of that now because I only just got it 3 days ago. So were the Ghana reports hard for you to get hold of as well, or the Ghana consultations from 2008 and the other ones?
Through the Mayor, we've had those for a period of time. We've only recently been asked for copies of that information. Until this point, we've been presenting information from those reports as a part of updates to Council and SDC and as in response to EM inquiries. So it's uncommon that we would go and provide that level of detailed information and technical studies that sit behind a project. We often have them associated with projects, but on this instance, given the heightened interest and request for information, we've made all of those available for elected members.
Okay, I'll bring that up in my debate. Just one more question. Are there any trails like this anywhere else that you know of that are actually say around a 1 kilometre path that's costing about $5 million is actually on the beach where it has spray and everything? Are there any others like that anywhere?
I need to take that question on notice, Councillor De Graaf. There's many trails in many different locations, some of which would have those characteristics. Springs to mind, some of it's not in the immediate vicinity of the waves, but even as recently as some of the Seacliff trails have been developed, elevated over the beach areas as well, would be something that's top of mind, but we could search further and find more examples if you're interested.
If you could, I would appreciate that, and I'll come back and debate after the other people have spoken. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
In the community results that we've had, we've basically been asking, would you like an ice cream? And everyone has said, yes, please. My concern has been consistent. We make decisions for the future. We don't make it for the term of council that we're on. And I'll quote something that was only just sent to me for something totally different. And it's basically, visionaries plant a tree that they'll probably never get to sit under and share the shade, but they share it for the future. And that's been my concern with regards to this project, is why I've been calling for the reports on the structure of this from going back to the meetings that were originally held, because I'm aware of the conversations and some of the engineers that were there. Mitigation of risk is, I see, primarily the whole issue of this, and it's never been addressed in the community consultations, which disappoints me. But I've gone along with a certain amount because I've been waiting for the structural engineers' reports and the updates because the first lot were done in about 83 and we've had others. I haven't had the time to read all of them, but I have read some of them, and I'm aware that this is not, but the recommendations are not based on it. But because I haven't had the opportunity to read all this information, I don't have enough information to base my opinion, other than I believe we should be addressing the risk and mitigating our risk. And there are plans there that likely may mitigate risk to a degree. And there are also, we've had a few deputations before council more recently that I don't believe we've addressed. So for the present, I'm out on this, and I can't support it because I don't have enough information to base it on. Thank you.
Just a further update to the previous answer. So the reports were made available on the elected member website. I didn't have it to hand, but we've looked it up on the 29th of October. So there has been a series of emails in the last few days that have brought reason for us to bring elected members' attention to those specifically as a part of those responses. The PAC-POI reports, which have only been referred to in correspondence in recent days, and they're the 1980s reports you're referring to. We've only tracked those down in recent days and added them, but all other reports have been available on the M website for over 2 weeks now.
Further clarification, I've only just got into it the last few days because there was an error that I couldn't get into it.
Councillor Peat.
Thank you, Worship. Just briefly, observing Councillor Bray's debate in reference to the shared path in Marion Council. I've not seen or walked that trail, and I suggest most members have not seen or walked it. So without any credible qualitative information, Councillor Bray's remarks remind me of what has taken place over the past 5 years regarding this project. In other words, people using any excuse not to proceed with the Bluff project. And I just want to make note that I are in favour of this motion.
Councillor de Graaf.
Thank you. Just do some debate here to finish up. I just would like to say that in my viewpoint that this project, as far as the Kaurna representations, really can't be downplayed. It's really, really disappointing that the community and other stakeholders felt that 21-day engagement period, or the engagement period that was supplied, just wasn't enough and hasn't meaningfully listened to or looked at their concerns, and the fact that they've had to come here tonight and speak to be heard. It's just really disappointing. It's not just about Aboriginal art and education about the area, and it's not up to non-Kaurna people to make that call. So we should be sitting down at the table with them and hearing their concerns and having meaningful dialogue, and not just saying it's like this, it's like this, it's like this, but actually like listening to them and then finding a compromise. I'm not being overly idealistic when I say the whole community could have been pleased to support a compromise, but the first steps to finding that compromise is hearing and acknowledging the concerns about the project. As I've just said, it is disconcerting to know that these significant stakeholders tonight have resorted to giving these passionate deputations because they feel they've not been engaged, not been heard, and not even been given a mechanism by which they could be heard. Furthermore, they were barely even mentioned in the Prudential Report or the Engagement Report. Copies of Georgina's and Buster's letters of opposition were not included. Nor was it mentioned that Aunty Georgina had commenced adding the site with the Department of Premier and Aboriginal Affairs onto the Aboriginal Heritage Register back at the beginning of 2018. So it was well known that this site was a site of significance. Under the Aboriginal Heritage Act, it actually states that that is actually an offence to be, I'll read that out. An Aboriginal site is defined as a place, a specific, this is quoting the Aboriginal Heritage Act,
a specific area of land on a water to which special heritage significance applies, and therefore attracts the protection of the Aboriginal Heritage Act 1972, and potentially also the protection of the Commonwealth Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Heritage Protection Act. So there are repercussions with doing this, and just saying that one group said it wasn't a site of significance, that doesn't cover the whole picture. So I'd like to finish my 1 minute debate time here with just reading out from the deputation that Buster provided, and Buster was hoping that this could have been read out earlier in the deputation. So I'm going to read what I can of that now. Recent objections from the Kaurna community have been in relation to the Jabuki track, which impacts all proposed coastal development. This track has been there for thousands of years, and today we are discussing this bike/pathway, and that council have not taken into consideration the effects that will damage the Jabuki track within council boundaries, and that this project is of 60 to 90 miles of the Adelaide coast. Please don't misunderstand me though, we don't oppose all developments along the coast. We just ask for respectful and honest engagement around our significant areas. And this is definitely one of those. And then she goes through and talks about some of the engagements that have happened, which was 2008 and 2005. And those are the reports that we got recently. And so for 12 years, there hasn't been a meaningful dialogue other than 10 letters were sent out, but no replies came back, other than 2 letters came back who said they really didn't agree with it, the way that things are going along. Stomp did not receive a stakeholder last asking us of our concerns. We've only been what kind of artworks and cultural signage discussions we would like to have, but our cultural and spiritual values have not been asked about at all.
That's your time, Councillor de Graaf. You need to finish up.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, there doesn't appear to be any further debate. Councillor McMahon, would you like to close?
I just wanted to touch a little bit on the community consultation part of this. It wasn't 21 days, it was 28 days, and groups like the Port Noarlunga Conservation Society, we actually give an extension beyond that as well. So that's pretty important to note and correct and put on the record. Part of this community consultation too, we've got to really look at what question we're asking. We weren't asking the community whether to do a top or bottom trail. We're saying the bottom trail, are you happy with this design of the bottom trail? So to be fair, people who didn't come and engage in this community consultation were people who already were under the assumption after our announcements that we're actually going to build this coastal park trail. So the data is skewed, but even with it being skewed, it is very convincing that the community want it. So I think that's quite strong. I just wanted to add on dot point 4. Dot point 4, I really want to stress, cannot be a tokenistic dot point. This is a dot point that really does need to come from the heart. And it's something that I think we can always be continually improving on. This is something that is close to my heart. And I think the more we can have real life in-person conversations with Kaurna elders and First Nations people, let's go down, let's walk the trail with them, let's have a talk to them, let's see what can be done for the future. I know this may not be the result they're looking for, but that olive branch is extended. I hope that they can reach out to us again. In closing, from when I shared this community consultation on my Facebook sites, overwhelmingly everyone just commented, just get it done. The community is exhausted with this consultation process now. They are overwhelmed by how much we've actually gone out. They just want us to get on with the job and get it done. Thank you.
Go to vote. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. Division is called. All those in favour, please stand. Those in favour include councillors McMahon, Jamieson, Tonkin, O'Brien, Greaves, Similiotis, Eaton, Pete, Olsen. Those against, councillors Bray, Brown, de Graaf. Move to item 9.13, the council and committee reporting schedule. No update to this report. Would anyone like to move a motion? Councillor Similiotis wishing to speak to the motion, and Deputy Mayor Eaton seconding. No further debate. We'll go to vote. All those in favour, That's carried. We have questions on notice from Councillor Brown regarding Wilfred Taylor Reserve, and the answers are available in the agenda and will also be included in the minutes. And also questions on notice from Councillor Brown regarding Aldinga equestrian land. Those responses have been emailed out to you, Councillor Brown. They'll also be included in the minutes. So now move to motions on notice. Motion 11.1 is motion on notice from Councillor Tonkin, a hosting of a petition. Still happy to move that motion, Councillor Tonkin? Would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, it's a very small thing we've been asked here to do. It's not costing the council anything in time, even paper. Just ask for a small A4 size piece of allotment in some of our council areas. And what they're asking for is funds to go towards secondary prevention services, including education, counselling, therapy and referral and support services. It's the least we can do is allow them an A4 size piece of land in our properties, I think.
Councillor Greaves wishing to second? No. Councillor Jamieson wishing to second? Do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, I think this one is safe.
Thank you. Councillor Greaves?
Thank you. I'm going to speak against this motion. Members, it was only a few weeks ago, and possibly Councillor Tonkin wasn't here at the time, in relation to the hosting of particularly petitions being put forward by state MPs of any colour. Previously, it has been a policy that we not do that, not because it's not a worthy cause, but simply because we do not want as a council to be seen, I guess, to be, supporting one person or another. So we've previously had a blanket policy around this. And I mean, I think it was, who was the person who did it last?
Me.
Leon Bignall actually had one on the GMO or one of the other hot topics. And while they are absolutely worthy causes, and I know this council is very supportive of the domestic violence services in the South, I won't be supporting this simply because I think we need to be really clear that, you know, as a council, we are maintaining a level playing field for anyone, and that the only petitions that are hosted within council facilities are those that council has specifically endorsed.
Councillor Peet.
Thank you, Worship. I speak in favour of the motion. If I remember rightly, last time I spoke about this, I think it was the SDC meeting, and I think, no, it must have been council meeting. And I think Heidi knocked me down by saying it was too wordy, but if I do recall correctly, that recommendation put before us was to give you the delegated authority to allow petitions in council premises, and we debated that as a team. And if I remember rightly, we decided that subjects like this will come back to us, council, to make a decision on this. And I think it's pertinent that this item has come to council, and right here and now we'll make a decision, I hope, in approving this one. But I leave it to my fellow elected members on that.
Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Mayor Thompson. I wonder if I can propose a middle ground here, because I hadn't actually thought of the point that Councillor Greaves made, but it's an extremely important point to turn each office of the City of Onkaparinga into, just in a little way, an annex of a Labor Party politician's office. And I'm not at all happy with that. That, I agree, is a really bad look. So what I would suggest is that we do exactly the same thing, maybe not at this meeting, but at the next one. But I think the head petitioner probably should be Councillor Tonkin, and then that can be added to what the state politician may choose to do. So I think that's the way we should go on this. So I urge you to vote this down, and then Councillor Tonkin can bring exactly the same thing with her as the head petitioner, and we can move ahead without creating the perception that council is a politically partisan organisation, which I think something look, we all know it's here in the chamber, but I think that we do try and rise above party political affiliations in what we do. So, yeah, I think maybe we could try that route. So I won't support it on that basis.
Councillor Demiliotis.
Just to agree with Councillor Greaves and Councillor Bray, because we've already turned down a petition from a politician. So we've sort of set a standard. I think it's really unfair to say no to one and then yes to another when the other issue was just as important. I'd really like to see council be the head petitioner, council petition the parliament. I'm happy for this to be handed over to the local politician, that's fine. But if it's in our facilities, we tend to not allow, like at Aberfoyle Park Community Centre, we don't allow the local members to have their flyers or their business cards or anything in there. It's always council paraphernalia or the training or workshops that are being held there. We don't put anything political in there, even though politicians and councillors turn up to give reports. There's nothing physically there promoting them because it's a community facility that's for our community. So I'm happy with doing a petition. I'd like to see council as the head petitioner, and then I'm happy to hand over that petition to the local member so she can do what she needs to.
Councillor Tonkin, would you like to close debate?
Oh, thank you for the advice and support for a petition, and I think that's probably a very good idea, and I think that should make everybody happy that the message still gets through. So I'm happy to change the motion. Can I change it now or not? Or do you have to vote it down and start again?
Probably best to vote it down and then raise an alternate.
Right.
That's it. Sorry.
Change the name.
Yeah, if that wasn't clear, we can vote it down now and then you can immediately raise an alternate. We're going to vote. All those in favour? All those against? That's lost. Would you like to raise an alternate motion? Go ahead.
So I would like to have it very much the same as what we've got there without as the head petitioner of the House of Assembly. Hang on. Oh, was council as the head petitioner? Did you go fast? Wow. Yes, with council as the head petitioner. Works fine for me, thanks. And that could, yes, take that one out too.
Mm-hmm.
I'll second that.
I'll second that.
That was seconded by Councillor Peat. Councillor Peat, are you wishing to speak to the motion?
No.
Councillor Greaves?
You're happy to support this. Just there would need to be obviously some words changed on the actual attachment one, because I think it refers to the office of Katrine Hildyard, etc.
Councillor Tonkin, do you wish to close debate?
No, I think it's covered, thanks.
We'll go to vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Okay, move to 11.2. Now, just given the motion that was endorsed at the report, I just need to check some things with staff. Could one of the project staff come forward? Can you clarify for me, since the additional dot points regarding project delivery of the base trail and timeframes, is this motion now still achievable concurrently with the other endorsed motion?
Through the chair, so based on the previous resolution which specified the project timelines that we need to deliver the project by, we wouldn't be able to facilitate this process and keep on track with that resolution time-wise.
Yeah, so with that in mind, this motion is now ultra vires, which means it's not within the power of council to deliver that. So you can move a different motion if you wish, or you could bring this back as a rescission motion at the on notice. Can you press your button? What motion are you
Thank you.
wishing to
Yeah, I'd
move?
like to move a different motion, please. I would just like to remove a couple of the options that in there that are making it ultra virus. So if I could get some advice, please, from governance on that, because I would still like to move a motion that some stakeholder.
Any motion that can't be achieved within the timeframes of the report that the previous report endorsed will be considered ultra vires. So like I said, the option is that you can bring this back as a rescission if you wish, because ultimately this is asking to change or stop what has been endorsed at the last report.
Okay, well, the alternate motion that I would like to move is that the stakeholder engagement, which is simultaneously, what's the words here? Simultaneously moving forward. Hang on a sec. So there's the stakeholder engagement, which is simultaneously being forward, moving forward. Oh gosh, I'm just stuck for words on this. So because that's kind of struck me as a bit of a surprise, where it kind of seems that, you know, the staff was already kind of up to date, ready to say no, et cetera, et cetera. So I need a minute to just
that's not a fair
think about it.
statement. The position of the council, we've just gained a new position of council, which was endorsed at the point of the report, and that is that this project proceed in line with those timeframes.
Well, I got advice on whether this was ultra vires before.
It wasn't ultra vires. What was originally included as the recommendation in the report didn't include any commitment to the base trail scope or timeframe.
All right.
What was additionally moved when the report came has changed that and therefore had an impact on your motion.
Yeah, it just would have been useful when I was asking about it, whether it was ultra vires, whether there was also some information that would have said to me, if this is passed, then it becomes ultra vires.
Well, the staff can't be expected to predict what a councillor is going to move.
Fairly
in a council
clear
meeting.
what was going to happen. Could I just, if you could just allow me that minute to try to work it out, because I would still like the engagement to be happening post haste. So I'm just trying to figure out a way to do that. So could I get the other text brought back up on the screen, if possible?
So the previous report, the addition that was made by Councillor McMahon's motion included ongoing consultation with Ghana. So if you wanted to refer to that in your motion, is that where you were going?
It is, but it was, I just wanted to have the motion actually taking into account that we're going to have some roundtables to actually discuss their concerns. So I don't believe that Councillor McMahon's motion mentioned the stakeholders' concerns. It only said about education and art installations, etc.
His consultation referred to ongoing consultation throughout the life of the project with Ghana stakeholders. So you could move a motion around what that might look like, if that may be workshops, for example.
I think I'm just going to leave it at this point. Hang on, can you hang on a second? Do you want to try to move it?
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Mayor. Just trying to assist here, Councillor de Graaf, in terms of what she's looking to achieve. My understanding from the previous dot point that Councillor McMahon included was that there some ongoing consultation with the Ghana communities. I'm wondering if I believe that Councillor de Graaf is looking for just some specific elements of the continuing ongoing engagement. I'm wondering if we could perhaps have a motion that says that the stakeholder engagement continues to address, and perhaps look at some of the earlier words that Councillor de Graaf had in the previous motion around what that continuing consultation should look like. My understanding is that that consultation will just move forward. But if we could talk about, if we could include some of those significant areas, would that be sufficient?
Yes. Yep.
So, yeah, it's really just highlighting.
Thank you.
Are you moving that, Councillor O'Brien?
Yes, I'd like to move that once I
Let's
see what it looks like.
Let us just get these words up.
Yes, please. I would hope that those things would be part of our continuing engagement with the Ghana community.
Thank you. That's brilliant. Yeah.
Councillor O'Brien, are you comfortable with the words on the screen? Can I just suggest that you add Wittenbluff stakeholder engagement, Ghana stakeholder engagement? Ghana stakeholder. Yeah. Happy with us just to add the word Ghana before stakeholder? We want to make it clear what it actually is related to. Yeah.
Just through you, Mayor Thompson. Councillor O'Brien, just where the cursor is clicking at the moment, where it has economic, sorry, that's not clear. I kind of understand it, but I don't know if... Yeah.
Okay, comfortable with those words on the screen? Do you wish to speak to that? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Thompson. I'm just trying to assist a councillor who's obviously very passionate and around this issue, and I understand what she's trying to achieve with the motion. It's my best effort to try and get some sort of consideration about the continuing engagement that Councillor McMahon has put forward, and to try and pick up on some of the very important concepts that we're looking at there. So it's the best I could do in a short period of time.
Councillor de Graaf wanting to second that? Do you wish to speak to that? Yep, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Brien, helping with that. I was kind of a bit flummoxed for a moment. So, I mean, this may not get supported, but basically, some of the things that we've heard tonight, just saying that there's that this is viable, I really have to disagree, because we're talking about $5 million being spent on a 1.3 kilometre long track. And that is just such a huge expenditure. It's 100% loan funded, when we've got so many other things like, you know, female change rooms, just so many different things here. And I just think that it was accurate, the actual forecasts of $93 million in profit being made and 23 million per year of actual economic stimulus in that area.
those figures didn't really seem to add up either. There's $10,000 of touch-ups needing to be done every year to actually just make sure that the path isn't going to be eroding from salt and waves and everything like that. It just doesn't seem to be responsible spending. So I'm just really, really surprised that the Prudential report didn't pick up on those matters. I did prepare a small amount of debate, but the fact that we've had NAIDOC week this week, you know, I think that really we should have actually listened to the community who came here tonight and actually just did what they asked us to do. So I would hope that this will at least look at some of that. Okay, so I'm just going to read out a little bit more here. How much time have I got my debate? Something from, keep going with what Buster has sent me in, to do a few signs and a touch of Aboriginal art in the corner of these signs really justifiable are they really justifiable for the destruction of the Tabuki track? Why within 12 years was the Kaurna people in Onkaparinga I've never met discuss or encouraged to have an opinion of Winton Bluff? Why is it okay to damage a small reef and its life in this area when you put down extra big, huge boulders? Although I must correct on that matter, because we've been told that there won't be huge boulders put down there. So I'm not sure if that bit is still accurate. Then there are concerns raised here about the actual safety of that area, that it's actually a 1.3 kilometre long path. And so a person could be going from one beach to another after they've been out at the Surf Lifesaving Club at night, and they're half a kilometre away from anywhere else with nowhere else to go. So they can't go out into the sea, they can't go over towards the cliff, they're only going to be running the other way down the boardwalk. I just think it's also a huge safety concern to be building a path like this that is not going to be easily policed, and that anything could happen to people down there. And I think that that is a concern that Buster's raised, and I think that is actually a real concern and a real danger. So she was asking whether that's going to be policed on a hot summer's night. Okay, and then I've got something also that Auntie Georgina has asked me to read out. Okay, she said, please thank the contributor of the photos taken at the Bluff and you sending them to me, taken during the season wave changes. They do show the force of the wave movement that clearly, and shows that the base trail should not go ahead around the Bluff and should not continue to be considered. So I won't have time to read all of this out, but I think I just would have liked to have a discussion as a councillor about the top trail and have a look at those other options of the top trail. And I just feel the way that all of this has been presented to us has just been kind of like zoomed along without actually having any consideration to the previous discussions and what the previous other councils decided as well. Thank you.
Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Mayor Thompson. Look, I don't have anything against this, but I think we have to be realistic. What's it really going to change? Continuing engagement over concerns. Are we, having done that, are we actually going to look at the scope of the design and make it a less intrusive path on the landscape? Somehow I don't think that's going to happen. So I think this is going to end up being one of those tokenistic things. Reminds me of the historic boat shed down at Port Adelaide when they were getting ready to do some redevelopment down at Port Adelaide. It was one of the last remaining boat sheds actually anywhere in Australia, because the port was fairly undeveloped, and the state government said, look, don't worry about it. We're going to have a thing here with a photo of it. So problem solved. So I think this is the same sort of thing. Like, in answer to Councillor Peet, I agree. I don't have the dimensions of the Marion section along the more difficult part of the coast, but it comprises the timber boardwalk and stairs and look, it'd be somewhere between 1 metre and maybe 1.2 metres wide possibly. And the remainder of it is paved and uses standard footpath on the side of the roads that are adjacent to the seafront. And I'm not sure what the standard footpath width is. I think it's maybe a bit over 1 metre. So if the same sort of standard that applies in the Marion area with a challenging environment was applied to the Bluff area, you'd probably reduce the scope down to maybe 1.5 metres, but with occasional 3 metre wide bays along the trail so that it widens out occasionally. There should be some advantages to that, because if you're working on something of that width, you could do a little bit actually on the surface possibly, and the raised part, if you are talking about half the surface area, then the forces you have to resist are reduced substantially. I think I think it's an exponential increase of force of wave of water force on objects as you increase the size. So reducing it down to something a bit softer on the environment would possibly have a lot of advantages. So yeah, I support this, but I can hardly see any significant changes being made. It's not the way we do business after consultation.
Councillor Jamieson.
I think we've all forgotten one reason what we did with 9, whatever it was. We need to get this to a point where the community is happy. I mean, that's the whole community. Now, I was willing to support some of this coming up at the moment, but Councillor de Graaf just went back about all the things and we just change that. We'll get rid of the bloody reports and all these sorts of things. That'll take them back. Now, people have come here expecting we can actually finish this whole argument and just go forward. That's the thinking. And this things I've just heard actually terrifies me, because these 3 people over here have to try and take this forward. You know, and what will happen is we'll just step from opening the door, we're going to step back and go back into that area where we're going to have the same arguments, the same aggravation, and all of the rest of it. So I suggest you vote this down. Councillor McMahon has already put in that we're going to negotiate all the way along with the Indigenous folk. That seems to be a thing we can work. But when you start bringing all this in and then I can't believe the things that were just said about going back and doing this, that, and the other. So I'd ask you just to vote this down, and the motion that Councillor McMahon got will stand, and that's what people can work with. That's what I can tell my community. At the moment, if I walk out of here now, it's say, well, no, it's not over. It's just in another stage. You can frown at me, Mayor, but it's just a problem now. So I think we need to fix this, and the other motion fixed it, and we can go on. There'll still be consultation and all the rest of it, but this motion, we're just going to go back. So I think we all should vote this down and just leave the other one there.
I'm not frowning at you, Councillor Jamieson. I'm just a bit confused because this is really just further clarifying Councillor McMahon's motion. Councillor Peet.
Oh, please, just in closing, it kind of annoys me when councillors continue debate on, let's say, the physical dimensions of paths and other councils, when in fact there's nothing in the report that actually says or qualifies what's being said. It's like, I'm a used car salesman, please trust me. So that kind of emotional response doesn't sit well with me, nor does the other one about, you know, people leaving surf lifesaving clubs that might fall off this shared path that we plan to install, and other police going to police it. I mean, are we going to put SAPOL at the end of Port Wonga Jetty to stop people walking out in the jetty at night and falling off? I mean, at the end of the day, the risk in OH&S is much risk. It's up to the individual to take on his own responsibility when it comes to health and safety. So, yeah, I do have trouble with this particular motion that's before us, and I suggest we vote it down.
Councillor O'Brien, would you like to close debate?
Thank you, Mayor Thompson. If I could just remind everyone that it's just a motion that we've got here, and it's just a forward-looking motion. It's not going backwards, and irrespective of the commentary around it, it's just a forward-going motion where we're trying to articulate and identify some of the things that would be part of that engagement. Councillor Bray might be right. Might not be a lot to it. It might not do a lot of good. But I still think it's worth supporting and worth fighting for and worth identifying. And I think it's reasonably significant. So I'd urge you to support the motion.
We'll go to vote. All those in favour? All those against? Oh, yep. That's carried. Division's been called by Councillor de Graaf. Those in favour, please stand. Councillors in favour are Councillors McMahon, Bray, Tonkin, Brown, O'Brien, de Graaf, Familiotis, Olsen. Those against are Councillors Jamieson, Greaves, Eaton, Peat. Okay, members, there's no petitions. Is there any urgent business? Councillor de Graaf.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to move an urgent motion that, not too sure of the wording, but I discussed this earlier today, that sand costings and viability for sand to be delivered onto Waring Street Beach be investigated.
Can you clarify what the urgency is for this motion?
Yes, you can actually. I did already have a question about this into staff, just asking how much it would cost to put the sand down there. I believe I mentioned this particular thing at one of our SDCs recently.
You did, so it is a bit disappointing it didn't come on notice.
I actually only got I got that information today, I believe. So, and I've discussed it with the stakeholders down there. So it is urgent because we're approaching summer and the beach down there is pretty much unusable. So that's why. So, and I've got the information back from SDC already. If I could actually just, I might just actually move the motion.
So you're asking for a report to come?
No, just actually for this to go ahead. Because well, I've already got
where are the costings? Where is the information for council to make a decision on this?
The costings have already been supplied by staff. I'm not sure if any of them are here.
Well, I haven't seen them. Has anybody else seen the costings? We're not able to make a decision on this. This needs to come on notice.
All right, well, I'll just leave it as a report then. But it is urgent because summer's coming, that's why. And there's no sand down there. I saw the costings today. They're not actually that expensive.
How much are they?
It's about 7,000.
Yeah, I don't know that that's enough information for council. It wouldn't be responsible for us to make a decision with costings like that. You can ask for a report and then see if you get a seconder.
Yes, a report, please. So
the report we brought back to the SDC.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A report we brought back to the next Strategic Directions Committee meeting outlining the costings, outlining the costing and viability. Well, it's not too soon if staffs already have the information. Yeah.
Should we also look at...
Sorry, we're in meeting procedure. Councillor Jamieson, you can press your button if you'd like to speak. strategic directions can't make financial decisions. So you can bring it to strategic directions but you'll need to wait for it to then get endorsed by council.
Okay.
Or you can bring it to the next council meeting.
Yeah, no, I'd rather bring it to SDC and then that way it's all ready to go for council meeting if people are actually in
Okay, you
support
happy
of
with
it.
the wording on the screen right now?
Yes, just except that it's the beach area that is directly in front of the boat ramp, not the area in front of the sandhills.
Can you just put in brackets after Waring Street Beach, directly in front of the, what did you call it?
Boat ramp
Boat ramp?
or ramp? I'm not sure if it's a boat ramp there. Just access ramp then.
Okay, do you wish to debate?
Yes, I do. Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Thanks, members. So as most of you would be aware, down at Waring Street, that people use this area all the time. We've got summer coming up really fast and there's no sand down there at all. And this would just, allow people to be able to use that beach properly and safely because it's also really slippery and clay-like without any sand down there. I did get some costings back from staff already, but they were including both sections of the beach, which is over to the right in front of the sandhills. And that area is it's under protections and it would be more difficult to actually get sand put there. So this is just directly like where that little mini beach area is and the part that we're actually considering fixing up in the near future as well. I think it's fairly straightforward and speaks for itself. The costings were around about $7,000. So I would be hoping that when it comes back to SDC that staff might be able to have a look at if there's any way this could be absorbed into any maintenance budgets or any other options like that. Hoping someone will support that. Thank you.
Councillor Jamieson, are you wanting to second?
I'd second this with, and I'd ask the mover just to add to it. The actual, at the moment, because I've been having a little bit myself, at the moment, they're actually launching from in front of that large sandhill because that sand's always there. And that's been a popular launching spot for a long, long time as well. And in fact, when they have a lot of craft along that area, then they just work down towards Southport on that sandy area there. It's a good launching spot. So I think, and I haven't noticed this shortage of sand, which I will look at. So I think if the motion is that we look at sand along that area from, say, 50 metres downstream from the access ramp and have a look at that, including that in the area. And whether you like it or not, that sand's coming down all the time. Because, it's not something you're moving, it's coming down all the time. So.
Yeah, I'd rather not add that at this point, just because there are cultural sensitivities with that other section. And I think this is just a start, and it's also a lot cheaper as well. And it just gives the beachgoers down there a lot more fun. May not be as good as having that whole section sandy, but this is an area that we want to promote for, tourism in future years. So I think it would be just kind of kickstarting things for that area. So I just prefer to leave it how it is, if that's all right.
So, Councillor Jamieson, does that mean you've seconded it or that you've not seconded it?
No, I think we need to look at
Okay.
I'll
Councillor,
second.
you wish to speak as the seconder? Okay. Councillor Bray.
Yes, I'll support this. There actually is a little bit of an advantage in just sticking to the bit in front of the access ramps. I'm assuming tipping the sand in there is going to be a lot easier than trying to move it along to the other part, which I think is a bit of a distance from vehicle access, if I remember it rightly. But I'm assuming this report, when it comes back, is going to comment on the possibility or the likelihood of the sand being eroded away pretty quickly, depending on conditions. So whether or not it is actually viable, I'm hoping the report will make that clear. So, yeah, thanks.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, a question on this is, if it's only about $7,000 for, isn't this just a maintenance issue, putting some sand? Do we have to have a report go before council to put a couple of truckloads of sand in a limited location? We got that tied up that we have to have a report on it?
Not our property.
Through you, Mayor Thompson, the placement of sand in an aquatic environment actually needs approvals. It needs permits, and also would need testing of the actual sand to make sure there's no contaminants in it that'll go into the marine environment. So there's a little bit more than just plonking sand down. That was all explained in the EM response that Councillor de Graaf received, and we can bring that forward in a report if that's what's requested.
Yep, no worries.
Councillor de Graaf, do you wish to close debate?
Thank you. Yes, if there are a few permits that need to be applied for and whatever, then it seems like this is something that the community down there are really, really calling for anyway. And it has been put forward that this would be a test case as to see how fast that sand does wash away. So it might play into the other, works that need to be done in Waring Street in the near future as well. Thank you.
We'll go to vote. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. Okay, we'll move to confidential items. Item 14.1 is independent presiding member and ordinary member appointments for the Audit Risk Value and Efficiency Committee meeting. Would someone like to move us into confidence? Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Greaves. All those in favour? That's carried.